Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening's meeting of Resources and Place Scrutiny Committee. I am Caroline Culver, Chairman of the committee. Members of the committee present this evening are Councillors Anthony Amatharaj, Laura Coyle, Ross McKinnon will be joining us shortly, Alan Macro, Eric Pattenden, Christopher Reid, Richard Sumner and Howard Wollaston. Portfolio holders joining us this evening are Councillors Vicky Paul, Nigel Foote and Jeff Brooks. I think, can I see Jeff? Is he? Hello. Oh yeah, sorry. So welcome this evening, colleagues. Council officers present to advise and support the meeting are Joseph Holmes, Chief Executive, Nikki Thomas, Service Lead for Legal and Democratic Services, Sarah Clark, Executive Director for Resources, Gabrielle Mancini, Service Director for Transformation, Customer and ICT, April Pebbody, Service Director for Community Services, Felicity Harrison, Culture and Libraries Manager, and Shannon Coleman-Slaughter, Service Director for Finance, Property and Procurement. Hopefully I've covered everybody. Stephen Chard is the clerk for the meeting and Gordon Oliver is the Zoom host this evening. Tonight's meeting is being live streamed on YouTube, so members of the public are able to follow proceedings. If we hear the fire alarm, we must leave the building immediately via the emergency exits. The assembly point is the Dolphin car park. If the lockdown alarm sounds, we will await instructions from officers. We will adjourn the meeting until such time as it is safe to proceed. Finally, I would like to take the opportunity to remind members that we are subject to the Council's Code of Conduct, which requires us to uphold certain standards, including, importantly, respect. We may not always agree with one another, but I would ask that in our disagreements, we are always respectful of others' views. Do members have any questions about the way in which this meeting will be conducted before we proceed? Okay, thank you. Do we have any apologies, please?
We do, Chairman. One apology from Councillor Jeremy Cottam. Councillor Alan McCrow is here as his substitute, and as you've said yourself, Councillor Ross McKinnon is on his way.
Great. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chard.
Chair, sorry.
Yes,
Councillor Coyle also on her way, I believe.
She's here.
Oh,
yeah.
beg your pardon. Sorry,
Yeah.
Laura. Sorry.
There's so many people in the room, it's difficult to work out. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Pattenden. Right, so we've got the minutes of the last meeting. Do colleagues have any comments on those, please? No. Do I have a proposer? Councillor Sumner, seconder. Councillor Reid, all those in favour? Thank you very much. So I'll sign those. Thank you very much. Great. So actions from previous meetings. Items 89, 90 and 91 all relate to the libraries, and we've got a libraries report this evening, so I think we can safely say that that will be complete by the time this evening's meeting is out of the way. So I think we can take that out. Oh, great. My computer's just gone wonky. On the items about Thames Water and the Environment Agency, I have gone to Councillor Gawley, who obviously isn't with us this evening, to ask for an update about the initial business case, which is mentioned under item 116. And I know that we are also having a discussion about what we do with regard to having either a special meeting where Thames Water and the Environment Agency are invited, or whether we have a single item on a standard meeting agenda about that. I am conscious that a member of the public is quite keen to say something about 116 and 143. I am content to suspend standing orders to allow that individual to speak for no more than 2 minutes on that item, because they have some information pertaining to those agenda items, because I'm quite conscious that these have sat on our list of actions since we had that last special meeting last November. So I think it's quite important that we try and cover that off. So I'm happy to propose suspension of standing orders. Does anyone second Councillor Amatharaj? All those in favour? Thank you very much. Ms Saunderson, is she there? You've got a fabulous.
Thank you.
Yeah, maximum of 2 minutes, Ms Saunderson. Thank you.
Good evening, members, officers and members of the public, thank you for this opportunity to speak. 116 was first raised in October 2023 at a special meeting where I presented evidence of severe pollution to the North Brook. There are two elements to concerns about the North Brook. There is the pollution and then there's the flood risk, and I'm not covering the flood risk tonight. The pollution has been, there have been, since the last scrutiny on Bond Riverside, London Road Industrial Estate, there have been 8 reports and 4 of them have mentioned the contaminants arriving in the groundwater from probably a historic landfill underneath the ground. So my suggestion, Thames Water have done their research which says that there are no ingress of foul water into this surface water stream, which comes out of the back of people's garden and is full up with black, horrible, stinking mud, noxious, giving off gas. And it's right nearly to the top of where the bottom of their gardens are now. Thames Water have said they've done their research. The Environment Agency promised some testing, but bearing in mind the whole of the Thames Basin, this is probably not a priority for them. And as Councillor Gorey has confirmed, it's not on their priority. So I think to break this logjam, if the council would now take responsibility as the corporate landlord for these lands to undertake the following actions. I would like them to, and bearing in mind the other reports that have mentioned this, have not ever tested this black, which is now mud, due to the draining whilst we've had the heat waves. So I would like...
Ms Saunderson, sorry, could you summarise? Yeah, thank you.
Non-dissolving pollutants tested, and I think the council has the ability to do that. To have cameras put down to see if you can identify where the groundwaters are entering the surface water, because it might be as simple as redirecting it to the foul water system. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm happy to suggest there's an action for the council as landowner to look into that issue. If other members are content, should we have a vote on that just to be sure? I'm happy to propose. Councillor Wollaston seconding. All those in favour? Great. Okay, so Mr Chard, have you captured that? Thank you. Thank you for your contribution, Ms Saunderson, and we'll add that to the action list. We can cover off when we get to the work programme about having a meeting with Thames Water and the Environment Agency and how we want to handle that. Item 212 about Faraday Road. So according to the Executive Forward Plan, there's going to be an item on Faraday Road at Executive on the 25th of September. And the action in here is that there's a draft being produced. Now, I don't want to hijack Councillor Foot, who's in the room for a different item. I don't know if you want to say anything about that at this time or whether you'd rather wait until the Executive meeting.
Thanks, Chair. I'll wait until the 25th of September, thank you, and then I can give a fuller...
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, so if we amend that item then and say we'll hear more then. Thank you, Councillor Foot. Right, so you've covered off. Oh, this item about the sewage works, item 223. I think over time we've got our wires crossed about this. It's not about the ownership of the Thatcham sewage works, because that's obviously Thames Water. It's actually about whether or not that sewage works is at capacity. And I know that councillors in that area have been concerned that if there's housing development in that area, when it's already at capacity, that could cause a problem. So I have asked Councillor Gawley for an update on that. And my understanding is that he's referred that to Councillor Gaines to get some more information. I think that's something Councillor Reid raised originally. Are you content with that, Councillor Reid?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Waste strategy. It says a future report to be brought to the Scrutiny Commission on implementation of the new recycling scheme. I think we also said when we discussed this before that it would be good to get an idea of the implementation of the 3 weekly black bins as well. I seem to recall that we did discuss that Are members in agreement? I think it would be good when we look at the waste strategy to actually look at how that policy is embedded. As we know, the council is keen to save money, but also to increase the amount of recycling and reduce the amount of black bin waste. So I think it would be quite good if we could have a look at that and see how successful that's been. Corporate programme becoming a standing item. I think we're awaiting confirmation from the corporate board about that, but it would be quite good for us to have that alongside our own forward plan and the executive forward plan. I'm conscious Councillor Cottingham was going to get back to us about various bits and pieces. The last meeting was very close to the executive, so it doesn't give very much time for the portfolio holders to go away and get the information before they actually go to the executive and talk about it. So the update on progress with corporate landlord model, I don't know if we've heard from Councillor Cottingham on that and whether we know it was covered at executive. I don't know. I think that's probably something we just need to investigate with Councillor Cottingham. And also there was an action there for Councillor Brooks as well about an update on progress with iTrent implementation. So perhaps we could catch up with Councillor Brooks about that separately, unless you want to say anything about that, Councillor Brooks.
Well, I think it's appropriate that there is a project review, and Sarah Clark to my left, I'll ask to put that together, send it to you for dissemination amongst the members.
Great, thank you very much.
Something's going on anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
It is one of the projects being
Okay.
reviewed by the Task and Finish group,
Yeah.
so you may want to wait and see what the Task and
Yeah,
Finish group
that's a good idea. Yeah, okay then. Councillor Reid is chairing that Task and Finish group, so if you just are mindful of that, Councillor Reid, that'd be good. Policy development groups. I know there's one on the 2nd of October about resilience and vitality of rural areas. And we did agree at the last meeting it would be good to get their forward work programme as well so that we know what's being discussed. So that's ongoing. I believe we're still due to receive that. Capital financing report. I think, have we got something additional on here about this?
There's two actions. There.
Yeah.
The first action point is covered by an attachment to the back of the actions list.
Right.
So that contains the projects costing up to or below the 250,000 that was asked for last time.
Yeah.
The second point has been circulated today, so apologies that was short notice. That's come through via an email this afternoon, and committee members have got a copy of the paper on their desks.
Yeah, okay. So that additional piece of paper, action 240, is about capital financing report. The question was asked last time, I think this might have been Councillor McKinnon, why the project special educational mental health and autism spectrum disorder resource provision had slipped from the current financial year. The response we've had here is that £214,210 HNPCA grant to be slipped to 25-26 to meet outstanding commitments, post-occupation security works and final retention release. So I'm conscious you've just arrived, Councillor McKinnon. I don't know if you want to say anything on that, whether you're happy with that response.
I'll take a good look at it, Chairman. Thanks for asking.
Thank you. And then,
apologies for lateness.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Action 243 was on revenue financial performance outturn. Information was requested on use of capital receipts for transformation activity as part of item on transformation. Right, so we've got that extra information there for when we come to that item. It would have been useful to have had that before the meeting, by the way, so that we had a chance to digest it. So that's it, I think. Has anyone got anything else they'd like to raise? Social housing, we'll cover that off when we get to work programme. Anything else on the action log, colleagues, that you'd like to raise? No? Okay. Right, thank you for that. Item 4, declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest, please? Councillor Wollaston.
I'm a shadow portfolio holder for both the library item and also the sports hub.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? No. Okay, thank you very much. Any petitions? I don't think we've received any petitions. Right, so on to review of transformation programme. Just as a preamble to this, as colleagues will probably be aware, Transformation is something that a lot of councils around the country are undertaking, and it is a spend to save programme designed to make long-term efficiencies and improve effectiveness of various services. So we've got members of, we've got the portfolio holder, Vicky Paul, this evening, and Gabrielle Mancini, the officer in charge of this programme, who are going to present to us, and then we will ask questions and have a discussion afterwards. Over to you, Councillor Brooks.
As the portfolio member at the time who kicked this off, I'd like to contribute to this item.
Great, thank you. That's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to everyone joining us this evening to talk about our transformation. So I'm very pleased to introduce the report, which has been submitted in advance of the meeting. Transformation started 2 years ago from effectively a standing start. Jeffrey Brooks was the original portfolio holder, and that transferred over to myself 18 months ago now. We are very pleased to have been supported by Gabrielle throughout that time. Transformation has been embedded throughout the business. We've been looking at various different projects as outlined in the original transformation brief. It has had, of the 6 items that it was originally designed to look at and review, there has been items that have been successful and delivered, and then some items which have been parked and are for review. I'm sure that we're going to be discussing several of those this evening, so I'll leave that there. Of the successes that transformation has delivered, and there have been many, one of the ones of particular interest and close to my heart was the project in Thatcham. And I always get this wrong. Is it Chestnut or Walnut Close?
Walnut, chestnuts and Hungerford.
Walnut. Thank you very much. Too many nuts. And that was really, really important for various reasons, cost avoidance, cost saving, as well as the impact of helping people that have been made homeless and not living in hotels. Really, really useful for that one. So I'd like to hand over now to Gabrielle to take you through some of the remainder of the report and some of the details. And you've got myself and Jeffrey here to talk about the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. So I think it's important to state that Councillor Paul is absolutely right that the new transformation function within the council is something that came into being in June 2023, following a decision to invest in a service director for transformation. Of course, change programmes and projects that would deliver benefits to the council and to the district weren't a new thing, but the decision to bring them together under an umbrella of transformation absolutely was. So that role, the transformation director role, was recruited into, as I've said, and from June 2023, I, within that role, began to work with the new administration at the time to develop a transformation programme. And that was approved by executive 2 years ago on Sunday, I believe. Not that I've got that date in my diary. And essentially the 6 projects within that were selected. Some of them were selected on the basis of their potential to have financial impact, because of course we are, as many local authorities are, struggling financially at times, but they were also, some of them were selected on the basis of priorities that the members thought would add value to the district. And so the 6 projects are listed within the report that you have before you, and the essentially the status of all of those projects and what has been delivered by each of those projects is also laid out. And I would anticipate that, I may have some questions on those. I think we also reflect within the report on the what next. And I think that when we had an LGA, a Local Government Association peer review back in January 2024, I think they endorsed the principle of us investing in transformation. They thought it was the right thing to do. However, they also reflected that all of the transformational activity, with the exception of the 6 projects I was leading, was aggregated across the organisation, and that the organisation might benefit from a centralisation of that resource and that project delivery to enable us to be more strategic and fleet of foot in how we were targeting that resource. That is something that members took very seriously, and we have since undergone an internal restructure to fulfil just that, so that essentially all of that resource and all of that project delivery is centralised. We're able to track it more effectively, and that we're able to be clear that the benefits of what we set out to do are in fact being realised. So I see that as a real positive, and some learning that we've taken from that external review, and also from the successes of the programme as laid out in front of you. As we are at that 2-year anniversary, and it was intended that those 6 projects would be fulfilled within the 2-year period, we are now needing to articulate that what is next. And as you'll see within the report, the intention is that within the next few weeks, Councillor Poole will lead a cross-party policy development group looking at the transformation programme. And I would anticipate that using a combination of all of the experience of the members on that group, all of the data we have about our service performance and our budgets, we'll be able to, again, develop a kind of a longer term, more strategic programme of transformation that will address some of the challenges that we are facing, both with our finances and with some of our service delivery. So that's me.
Did you want to contribute, Councillor Brooks?
I'm happy to. Thank you for the opportunity. There's been some really good successes. If you look at the recruitment, we call it the Employee Value Proposition Programme, but that has led to tremendous productivity, efficiency in the recruitment process. I think it bears down on retention as well, why people want to work here and want to stay here. It also plays to the fact that we've saved an annual amount of £5 to £6 million in the freelance contractor payroll cost, or they're not payroll, but fees. That was a tremendous success. I'm sure members may probe 1 or 2 that didn't come quite as we would have wished them to, and care homes is a case in point. I can wait for questions, but I will say on care homes, we had hoped to get the private sector to take over at least 2 of them in the period. That was one of the work streams. And to date, they've not shown the appetite to do so, and we are still working to that end. Having said that, some efficiencies have been delivered, and a run rate at the moment of about £600,000 of efficiency savings in a year, without impacting the important care aspects of a care home. So I'll just finish on this, and then I'm sure members will tease it out of me. We've learned a lot in those two and a bit years. The LGA peer review that we had done in February last year said transformation has to be involved in everything. And outside of those 6 work streams, there were departments getting on with transformation. Magic Notes is an example that you'll have heard of within the adult social care space, or social care workers' reports, minutes, action points, automated through an AI software program. Now, what we've got to do now, and are doing so, and I'm sure the portfolio holder will give you complete assurance on this, is transformation is now embedded, and all of those projects that have been launched have been coming into the centre to be monitored, progressed, supported, and improved. I've even thought myself, do we put a little motif or logo on a transformation project so everybody's aware that this is meant to deliver efficiency, better services, and savings. So it's an evolving process, I suppose, is what I'm saying in essence, of which some we've done spectacularly well, and some we are still working to achieve. But I'm sure we'll all take questions, including Shannon behind me, if there's any financial points as well. Thank you, Chair, for letting me do that.
Great. Thank you very much to all of you for your introduction to the item. Bearing in mind, before I open up to questions, that this is about saving money, we really need to get to the bottom of what the net costs of this programme are. Ultimately, the staffing costs, where the money has come from to pay for it, and whether we're happy that the savings have been made ultimately. So those are the questions that we need to be focusing on this evening. So I've got a number of questions, but I'll open up to the floor first of all. Councillor Amatharaj.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the report, and particularly I want to commend that there has been a lot of efficiencies and transformation in the in the sense of transformation has happened, particularly on the home to school transport. I have a question on that one. I believe you will all acknowledge this is one of the subject which we all members are queried, and it's one of the biggest caseworks we have. We have residents querying always about the home to school transport one. I read the report and it talks about efficiencies and consultant reports in terms of savings. What I'm trying to attribute to is that with all these savings, with efficient routes planning and all this stuff, has there been efficiency in terms of that savings, but also has there been a reduction in the waiting list of the home to school transport applications? Because while we are saving money on this one, we should aim for reducing that waiting list. And if there is no waiting list, that's the key objective, I guess, as a council, that we are able to provide the address the needs of the vulnerable children there. So if you could elaborate on that one, and if you don't have that data to point it out, we can take an action to find out how this transformation has led to the reduction in the waiting list. Thank you.
I would have to take away the question about a waiting list for homeschool transport, because of course, if an individual, if a child has an entitlement to that transport package, of course, we are kind of statutorily bound to provide that. So I do need to look at that. I think in terms of the efficiencies on home to school transport, as the report lays out, it is predominantly contractual and route optimization savings that we've been able to take. I think an important point to make when it comes to home to school transport is that the predominant budget for homeschool transport is for pupils with SEND. And as a result of that, their individual transport packages can be very costly. So in order to, I guess, mitigate the need to spend money on some of those expensive transport packages, we need to look strategically at capacity for SEND places within West Berkshire. And so until such time as there is sufficiency locally for SEND places, we will have to, place some children out of district, which comes with additional cost. And so I'm pleased that kind of alongside the work that the transport team has been doing within the transformation programme to bring down the contractual spend, the education service is kind of making strides in terms of its SEND sufficiency planning, which again I would anticipate over time will significantly reduce that spend within packages. But I would have to take the waiting list question away.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. In 4.3, obviously, we've got the new permanent service director. Just sort of taking a step back, many of us coming from the corporate world, two approaches doing change, large-scale change. One is to have project managers quite close and embedded within, and there are advantages for that. Project managers then become specialists for that department, and to a certain degree they end up being designers and architects as well. Not always a good thing. Or you go for the transformation department, which I've seen, and many companies do one or the other, or some, if they're big corporates, will do both. I was just wondering what advantages you see on the approach we've taken, and what those net costs initially have been, and what are the net savings from those investments in creating the transformation department itself.
Okay, so in terms of the cost of establishing a kind of a restructured transformation function, the kind of budget envelope that I've been given to create that new function is the same as the envelope I had before. So officers are migrating in from other areas of the organisation into the centre, and they are at present bringing in their existing duties and job titles. So the budgetary envelope has remained the same. I think in terms of the advantages that I see, as I pointed out, the Local Government Association report did make the recommendation to us that centralisation would be of benefits, mainly in the sense of improved assurance, better consistency in terms of our project delivery, better benefits realisation, and then I guess ensuring that we are taking that consistent approach to change. And so those are the benefits I absolutely see through that centralisation. To your point around specialisms, I think that is something that members have recognised is needing to be addressed. So we've adopted a model which we feel is kind of the best of both worlds, in the sense that we will have that strategic lead over project delivery, and that individual will be supported by 2 individual portfolio managers, one who sits over capital transformation and one who sits over service redesign. And those 2 portfolio managers will oversee their respective programmes of work. They may take advantage and use different project management methodologies depending on the type of project. So we're kind of going for that nuance of different types of project delivery, but with the same principles governing how the programme itself is developed. Of course, this is a new model. I'm recruiting into the lead over the project service next week. So it's very much a moving feast. However, the consistency does have kind of clear potential to have those benefits that the LGA suggested that they might, and that members have suggested they would like to see.
If I may, Chair, can I have a follow-on? It's good to see, that, we've committed to a strategy and we're going to follow through on that. I was less comforted by the words moving feast. I do wonder whether we can get a baseline with the appropriate KPIs, key performance indicators, now, a baseline of the business case for this transformation programme, and then that's something that can be reviewed by Scrutiny, maybe on a 6-monthly basis, because I think for a resource place, I think, this is a real focus item, because, the survival of the council is very much dependent on this financial transformation we're going through.
Okay, sorry, Councillor, just to give some reassurance in terms of moving feast. I mean, I don't have individuals in those posts yet, so I don't know who the people are who are going to be doing the roles. That's what I mean in respect of that. I think in respect of the development of the future programme, as I've indicated, Councillor Poole will be leading a policy development group which will come up with that. And by its very nature, and in line with our project management methodology and our financial planning, there will need to be individual business cases for each of the projects within that programme, which will be tracked, and which the transformation service and finance will work closely to ensure are kind of delivering as expected. They are then kind of tracked through all of our internal governance groups, which include members, and of course, corporate board have oversight of those as well. So that assurance is there, but of course I couldn't speak to whether they come to scrutiny. That would be a decision elsewhere.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Wollaston.
Okay.
Beg your pardon. Sorry, Vicky. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Reid, just to expand a little bit more on that. So as part of the work that we do as part of the corporate programme and corporate programme and transformation board meeting that I chair, it was reviewed at the last meeting that we're going to be adding in new policies and procedures to make it more robust. So within the business cases that come in, there will be an ROI based off of what we're expecting the project to make, and that will be tracked through the project management team. There was also going to be thresholds for escalation should a project go over that funding. So we do have guidance and oversights. So we're going to control that more. And with regards to new projects coming through, this is going to be really quite important for the policy development group that I'll be setting up imminently, which is going to be cross-party, and we're going to look at all the different areas of where we think that there can be further transformation, whether it's digital, whether it's process, whether it's interoperability between departments, and that's going to help to deliver future transformation across various projects and various departments within the council, within the organisation. That will all be delivered through Gabrielle's team within PMO.
Thank you very much for that.
And if I could add some assurance, each transformation programme stream of work is a project, really. It's got to have a business case, a return on investment, and that needs to be monitored. the KPIs to me are, is it delivering what it said it would? Not only in terms of efficiency and and sometimes that's quite difficult to measure, but certainly the return on investment. And when you talk earlier, Chair, about is it delivering the savings? Well, of course, some of these are ongoing and will continue to deliver savings for several years ahead. So I don't think it's a straight, that's done. We bank the savings, we move on. The changes we make, and as I say, I'll come back to it because I'm proud of it. We've saved up to £6 million a year on freelancers. That's annual. So each one is a project we need to monitor. The PDG that Councillor Poole is setting up is about new transformation projects. It'll only be a couple of meetings, but we get cross-party members involved to say, are you looking at this? Are you looking at this? What do you plan to do about that? I don't mind telling you now, if I was in that PDG, and I probably won't be, I want to see this organisation grip commercialisation. Where are the income streams that we need? We get over £2 million in here from traded services with schools. I believe that's a tremendous opportunity to enhance that, broaden it, and sell it to more schools or more services. This is HR support, legal support, and to sell it in Hampshire and Oxford and who knows, the Ridgeway. So the assurance I'll give you, and the assurance I think Gabrielle Mancini and Vicky Poole has given you, is each one is a project to be monitored in its own right, and that it does what it's supposed to do, and it does it ongoing.
It's very encouraging here that we'll have the ongoing benefits realisation tracked post project. I think also on the KPIs, it would be good to see some measures around the social benefits as a council, because we do have that important outcome that residents and schools that we talked about. So not just financial KPIs, but I think social KPIs as well.
Great. Councillor Wollaston and then Councillor McKinnon.
My apologies, I missed this report that came out a week ago, so forgive me, I've only seen it today. If I've missed something, so my apologies. I'm very pleased to see what's happened on Walnut Close, and the fact this was that £650,000 worth of savings. There's no measure as far as I can see on what the cost has been. I'm not disputing that it's a good thing to do, but I think it would be useful to have some balance.
So the capital budget allocated to that project was £86,000, and that's kind of the final budget that was spent. And those figures that you have in terms of savings are net of the staff costs that are included within the financial model of running the facility. So yeah, £86,000, and it was a 3 or 4 month turnaround, so quite a quick project as well. Certainly in terms of pace of delivery.
Delighted to hear it. Thank you very much.
Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Councillor Poole, you mentioned that transformation started from a standing start in May 2023. Was I imagining the millions of transformation funding that was allocated from 2019 onwards?
Forgive me, Councillor McKinnon, that was before my time within the electorate. And from my understanding that the transformation happened throughout the council, but there was a dedicated person overseeing strategic transformation starting from 2 years ago that looked at large-scale transformational projects.
But you would concede that there was a corporate programme board which existed throughout those 4 years, whose job it was to oversee transformation projects. It was not a standing start, as you put it. Would you agree?
I was not part of the administration or the electorate at that time, so I would defer to someone who was. Councillor Brett.
I'm happy to come back. You didn't badge it, I don't think, as transformation. You were clearly doing changes. I remember Care Director, which cost this council £760,000 because it went on for 3 years. That was a transformation project. So yeah, transformation was going on before this was launched. In fact, it was your administration that actually put that post in place.
It was in March.
So yeah. we badged it as transformation, and we've taken it on, and that's what we're talking about this evening.
So a standing start is perhaps an unfortunate
standing start for Gabrielle Mancini and this new programme.
Okay. Time Lord 2 is mentioned in the report quite a lot. I mean, that was going on from 2020 onwards, I think. So,
Well, Time Lord 1 was before that, but
well, and there we go. I agree with your comments, actually, both of you. A lovely report with nice photos of you both there, Councillor Brooks and Councillor Poole. I agree with your comments when you say when you entered administration in May 2023, we gained control of a council that was performing well and with which local residents indicated satisfaction with many local services. I think it's very good that you put in there and stepping away from sort of some of the partisan stuff that we hear sometimes. I do have a very technical question though. I'm looking at the budget report back in February, and there's a savings item in there for resource centres. And the resource centres saving in the budget report is a saving of £469,000. And the commentary is to explore options with the external market in delivering day services in a different way and or potential closure of the 3 sites. And that's to deliver a budget saving of £469,000. Now, you remember that budget meeting and meetings afterwards when we had a lot of resource centre staff in that public gallery and quite a powerful and moving display. And now I look at the resource centres commentary in this report. And the commentary is very different. This report says that the resource centres project is exploring opportunities to co-locate services within existing resource centre assets to create an integrated service model. That is a complete 180 on what the budget commentary was. So I've got 2 questions there. Firstly, has the decision been made, as it appears to have done from the commentary in this report, to go back on what the budget saving proposal was? If so, excellent news. And secondly, in the table at the back of the transformation report, Councillor Poole, we have a saving of resource centres on £469,000. It's exactly the same saving in the budget. They both can't be correct.
I'd like to take this one, Chair, because it's not one of the transformation work streams. Now, until an announcement is made, the £469,000 is still within the transformation and the potential savings as per the budget. And no announcement has been made. You know, I hope the public knows, officers know, members know, a lot of work's been done on mapping where a lot of those clients, residents, people, users of the 3 resource centres might go within the voluntary sector. That was the challenge, and that was in the budget. Re-provision of those services. That work has been done, and very, very soon we will announce the outcome of all that work. I'm not going to be pressed to do it this evening, but for those who attend next week on the 25th of September, the executive meeting, there will be an announcement. I'm not going to preempt it this evening.
This is very important, Chairman. This report is before this commission tonight for us to scrutinise. How are we expected to scrutinise it when the commentary in the report does not match with the cost saving? The cost saving is exactly in the same. I wonder if the portfolio holder's got anything to say on this. With the cost saving is exactly the same as the budget. It sounds very much like, and I know you're not going to be pressed, but the commentary in this report is a complete reversal of the budget saving. And you have got staff in those resource centres who have been enduring months of turmoil and uncertainty about their jobs. That turmoil and uncertainty should not be extended to fit your executive timetable. And if no decision has been made, why on earth does this transformation review describe a completely different future and vision for those resource centres? Councillor Poole.
I have nothing to add.
I'm asking Councillor Poole, the portfolio holder.
I have nothing to add. There will be a
this isn't really scrutiny, is it? It's not a great look for you.
Can I just ask when the paperwork for executive on the 25th is going to be published publicly?
Imagine 7 days ahead.
Tomorrow, okay.
Probably, but actually it will be a statement. It will not be a report.
Right.
It will be a statement on the evening.
One final follow-up, Chairman, and really it's a question for you as the chairman of this Scrutiny Commission. How are we expected to scrutinise a report which is a cost saving clearly rolled forward from the budget, with a commentary and a vision for the future of the resource centres, which is clearly very different from the budget? That is not acceptable and not good enough, Chairman, and I wonder if you'd like to comment.
Thank you very much, Councillor McKinnon. I've got a number of questions myself to ask actually, but I will bear in mind the comment that you've made. Does anyone else want to ask anything? Because I do have quite a few questions. Councillor Macro.
Thank you. So I'm pleased to see the result from the Walnut Close Children's Family, temporary supported accommodation, and also that we're looking to do something similar at Chestnut Walk in Hungerford. It's not only a financial saving that we've achieved and likely to achieve, it's also much better for the families. In the past, families have been put in B&B as far away as Slough, and that completely disrupts families' lives. Children are miles and miles and miles away from the schools and so on. So with this closer to the centre of the district, I think it's a much better solution, both financially and for the families themselves.
We seem to be getting some feedback there. Is it? Oh, beg your pardon. Okay. Would you like to respond?
Yeah, so thank you for that, Councillor Macro. Yes, I think I'm grateful to you for pointing that out. I think one of the key aspirations for the administration was to reduce bed and breakfast homelessness and to eliminate bed and breakfast homelessness for children. And I'm really proud of the achievement of members and the team for bringing down the number of children within bed and breakfast accommodation from 38 to just 1 or 2, depending on which day you were counting, within the first 4 months of Walnut Close being in operation. So that is a huge achievement and something that actually has been recognised by some national awards having been won, and a number of other local authorities looking to adopt our model of repurposing assets to reduce temporary accommodation and bed and breakfast homelessness.
Thank you. That sounds even better than I thought it would be. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Chair. Just to read the next sentence to the one read out by Councillor McKinnon earlier on. What we also inherited was a council with a huge potential to improve, but on the brink of financial difficulty. So given that position, without the transformation that's been achieved so far, where would the council be?
On a broad question like that, and I'll take the sting out of the meeting a little bit, both the last administration and ours has been under very significant financial pressure and will continue to be so. And we've had to go and get, basically to bolster our reserves, extra financial support. Without reducing the 270 freelancers down to 115, I'm not sure, I think we'd have been going for 30 million or so in exceptional financial support. Without some of the savings, other savings we made in terms of the social savings, social value savings, we've Walnut Close, home to school transport. These are things we've had to do. I suspect, I don't know, we'll never know, that the previous administration would have had to grasp those sort of nettles as well. And it won't stop. At the moment, we're looking at, as we build the budget for next year, potentially £9 million of savings again. It's been, Councillor McKinnon will have a bit of a knockabout in terms of the politics of it. But I know, and I was very careful how I interacted with Councillor McKinnon through the 4 years of him being the portfolio holder for finance, how tough it is. And I like to think he'll give me credit for not playing too many politics with that. But it is the landscape of local government.
Councillor McKinnon, I saw your hand again.
Yeah, I do. We're here to scrutinise the current administration, Councillor Patton. I think it's good to remember that. Taking the sting out of a meeting, Councillor Brooks, this is scrutiny. No, sting's okay in scrutiny. It's supposed to be a bit stingy, isn't it? Scrutinisation of the administration?
No, you're supposed to be a critical friend.
Exactly right.
We improve.
And sometimes that criticism can be difficult.
Can we let Councillor McKinnon continue?
Sometimes that scrutiny can be difficult. It's not playing politics to say that this report either hasn't been read by you before it's been brought forward, or you've just missed it. The cost saving from the budget doesn't match the commentary, and it's not good enough. We can't scrutinise it properly. Now, scrutiny is sometimes uncomfortable for the administration. I was in your seat, well, not quite your seat, for a few years. And it's not always nice because all administrations make mistakes, but don't try to dismiss legitimate scrutiny by saying it's plain politics or knockabout. I know I like a bit of politics and knockabout. It's not what I'm doing here. So please don't denigrate that criticism with that sort of remark.
I don't think I denigrated it for a moment. What I look for out of scrutiny, and good scrutiny, is improving the services and the residents' experience. And if scrutiny is really just used for political point scoring, that's probably not doing that. But I won't say any more on that, Chair. You're chairing the meeting, obviously.
Councillor Sumner.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a few points that I've noted, and I'm not going to dwell overly on the text within the report, but page 12 does state, as Councillor Brooks has already confirmed, that pre-May 2023 things were already in progress, and I just want to re-emphasise that point. Costing is absolutely crucial to understanding how well you're doing when you put transformation forward, and I think we would all accept that. One thing that my role within the NHS constantly re-emphasises is the need to know the absolute breakdown of everything that builds up a cost to provide a service. And I recall, Councillor Brooks, you would have probed us many times over the ability to record officers' time and why couldn't we do it, and how do we take that forward. I don't know whether that's currently in place or whether it's in progress, but I do think it's something that in the round, when you take details for costing of services, in whichever form, becomes a crucial element to it. So I would ask, but I hope that is something that is coming forward, not just on that specific element. Selling services, is it too early to start probing Ridgeway partnerships to look at how we can already go out there and contribute and sell what is effectively best practice? We've done it successfully before. I remember services that we've taken out to others. I can't remember what it was for now, and I don't think they're still in place, but I do recall the conversations whereby we were regarded as being a best practice provider of services. So it's good to see that that's still the case. It's good to see that it's on the agenda to keep pushing. But my question is, would it be too early to be probing partners in the potential Ridgeway? And the final thing for me, and then you can come back on all of them, is just the phrasing at the end of the report on page 25, which has the danger of suggesting that there's dead time between the current programme of work and the oncoming requirement to identify new stuff. Now, I can't see anything that says this is we haven't got a programme laid out. We haven't got a Gantt chart that says this one's going to finish here and the next one's going to pick up there. I accept that. But yeah, as I've read it, it implies that there is the potential for dead time, and I suspect that is not the case, and I hope that is not the case. But any confirmation of that, and I think that probably overlays with things that Councillor Reid has probably also said before me.
Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Chair. It's an interesting one about Ridgeway. I think we're putting in place a submission. We're working closely with other authorities. I'm not sure I'm ready yet to say, now, look here, here's something good you should be doing. There's going to be sensitivity about councils disappearing, merging. So the time, I hope, will come when we could take, for instance, our recruitment offering and say to South Oxford and Vale, this is how we do it. I don't think the time's quite here yet. One thing before, I know Councillor Poole wants to come back on the ongoing programme. What we did need to do here, and is being done, is centralisation, not only of transformation, but also project management. Also legal, comms, finance. You'd ended up with almost replicating some roles right across the authority and building departments almost independent themselves. And you'll know, I look at Councillor Reid, I look at Councillor Macro, people who've been in IT and project management, that you need a good project management office with that lens and right across everything, of which transformation is an important part. That centralisation has been going on. We've had to consult, it's being brought in the middle. We're now recruiting in the next couple of weeks for the head of the PMO. I think the title's a bit more grand than that, but where that project monitoring can be done, where project managers can be assigned, and when that project is over, they can come and be reallocated as opposed to being in a silo where they finished a project and now they're between one. And Councillor Paul will pick up about the end of a transformation project and the next. But that centralisation will be so much more healthy for this organisation. That single point of failure will be minimised. The transformation team at any one time may go up to 20 people, but with a kernel, a group in the middle of about 6 to 8, but pulling in other resources to build that out as those transformation projects need to be done. This is going to be best practice project management in here, when in the past it's been quite fragmented. And I'm not, I'm seeing perhaps Councillor McKinnon revving up a little bit for that. I think it went on over years and years and years, and I think it was the preferred method or modus operandi of the chief executive between 2003 and 2017, Nick Carter. I think it was his modus operandi. We're bringing it back together. We're getting it centralised. We're getting it built, working well together. Sorry, a long answer for you there. And I know Councillor Paul wants to come in.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brooks. So at the end of every project, you don't just close the books and move on to the next project. You need to take time to stock, review, feedback, share methods of working, what went well, what didn't, and also do a true up to say whether or not it's delivered exactly what you needed it to do. So there are various different terms. I mean, in construction, you call it snagging. So you typically have 12 months worth of snagging. And it's really important to capture that before you move on to the next project. And you keep the one plate spinning as you're getting ready to do the next one. You do your project startups. So apologies for the phrasing. If it was read and interpreted like that, we've got plenty of projects that are waiting to get started and waiting to get going.
Thank you, Chair. Just to build on that, Councillor Poole, I think within the report, each of the individual projects and the commentary around those articulates whether a project has been completed or remains in delivery. And so where it remains in delivery, that is what is being done now. So that isn't dead space. I mean, I appreciate what you've said about a Gantt chart, and, that isn't how I've kind of decided to present this report. However, of course, that is the way that members will see that information presented at the internal programme boards that they use to monitor delivery.
Councillor Reid.
Really good to hear the vision you've got for transformation, and you've certainly got the Scrutiny Commission's attention on this, as you can tell from the questions that are coming in. The only thing that caution I'll advise, so it's not a question, is transformation as a department can be a big beast and it requires a lot of feeding. And so keeping an eye on what that backlog is and the prioritisation of that going through, that will be interesting as well, I think, to Scrutiny, if that comes back, every 6 months or every year, to see, how is that transformation department going to be fed, and, that benefits realisation that's coming out. Just to drop down into a little bit of detail, a couple of things that are close to my heart. So going from the big picture to the minutiae. Page 20, we heard from Anthony about home to school transport, really key. That's getting cost savings out of rural locations for home to school transport can be really tricky. Just producing or asking the dwindling number of coach providers to have bigger and bigger coaches can be tricky for rural areas, because we don't have the turning areas. Many of the roads will not take 72-seater coaches. I'm just wondering if a little bit of caution on just having pure cost savings against, again, the other social benefits of keeping some of the social care, social housing, parents' children still served throughout our community, rural communities. And again, on page 22, the very low income families, again, that those social benefits. So I presume I'm really going back to those social KPIs as well as just the pure cash ones.
Thank you for that, Councillor Reid. I think that, the officers and the parameters of the project have kind of, looked at those ways in which we can save money, both contractually and in terms of individual routes. I just want to provide some assurance that on an individual route by route basis, members have looked at where officers have identified opportunities to save money. And when they have felt that it is not palatable or there are social reasons not to take those savings, they have elected not to do so. So members are very mindful of possibly the knock-on effects of individual savings initiatives and do keep an eye on those. And I believe that Councillor Coyle and Councillor Reid, you were, and I think Councillor Shakespeare as well, were aware of one such example where they took that consideration and elected not to proceed with the officer suggestion.
That's very reassuring. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I've got a number of questions. It says in the paper that we've had new members of staff, and it also refers to existing members of staff who've contributed to the various projects. Are you keeping a track of which members of staff are being paid for out of the capital receipts and the contribution of the business as usual staff? And also I understand that the new staff can be paid for from capital receipts, but if they're made permanent, they become part of the revenue budget. And therefore that would be a net increase in our staffing budget, presumably our general budget. So are we keeping a track of that so that we know which jobs are becoming permanent and are actually costing the council money?
Can I refer that to Shannon? But I'm be pleased to add to it.
Yeah.
Essentially, when a post is transformation funded from the capital receipts, it's because it's undertaking transformational activity. That is the requirement. So if a post, irrespective if it's permanent, fixed or temporary, and it's undertaking a transformation project, will be paid by the capital receipt.
Okay, right. Thank you for that clarification. I'd like to echo the good projects that have been undertaken, but I'm just a little bit concerned about the amount of information that we've got about the costs. So I'm very keen to know how much money we have made from selling off assets, for example, what the opportunity cost is of selling off those things. So, for example, if we've sold a property, are we factoring in to our calculation about whether transformation has been a success, what the opportunity cost is of if we had used that money in a different way? And if it's a property that we've sold and we've lost a rental income on it, for example, are we also taking account of that in our calculation? Councillor Brooks.
I think it's a brilliant question. And we need to get you the answer, because actually, when we take some money from a property sale, only some of it, and Shannon will know the percentage, really ought to be used for transformation. The return on that investment is still, we've not, to my knowledge, Shannon may say differently, logged that, say it's £500,000 against that transformation project, which came from the sale of that asset, where we then forego an amount of rental income, and do we get more than that on the transformation? Now, I don't know if Shannon's done it, but I think it's a really valuable input from you, Chair, because I think it's absolutely right that we do that. I am pretty sure that we will show a real net improvement in the savings versus the rental income forgone. But that's, you don't take my word for it. I think we need to do that bit of work.
Yeah.
Unless, Shannon, you tell me we're doing it already.
The piece of work is underway and we are developing an optimisation model that will assess that for every business case coming through.
Okay. I think it would be good as well as if we can include business as usual staff time that's been spent on transformation projects. So, for example, if we're doing a piece of work and we go to an existing officer and say, we need 10% of your working week for the next 6 months, for example, are we also factoring that into our calculation about whether or not transformation has actually saved us money in the long term?
I don't mind doing that. What the dilemma is, and it comes up in your report on the Monks Lane project later, is, and I think the last administration, and we're wrestling with it, is it practical to ask staff to fill in timesheets? I don't think it is, and I think Councillor McKinnon and I are agreeing here. We're not a solicitor practice. We're not KPMG or PwC. I really don't see that would be effective. I also think if you imposed it, it would be highly inaccurate. But what you've just suggested as a broad brush can't be accurate to the minute, but is a useful contribution to the cost of the transformation. And I don't see why we shouldn't. Of course, what I wouldn't want to do is overload it with administrative recording. Sorry, Mr. Chard, were you on that for 10% last week or 20%? And Nikki, did you spend 30% for 3 weeks? It can get very clunky, but I think the principle could be adopted.
Because I understand that quite senior members of the officer team were involved in some of the projects, like doing up the building that you were talking about and so on. And I'm just wondering, are we factoring that in?
Gabrielle, do come back. You've got your scrubs on.
I know.
that day. Yeah.
So I
think it was 2 days.
So in the case of Walnut Close, we did have 2 days set aside whereby officers could volunteer their time to paint. I feel that in terms of adding social value, and actually as a senior officer who doesn't often get to fulfil her duty as a corporate parent, being able to contribute in that way was just, I suppose, one of my most rewarding days at work. And actually, you know, Councillor Codling, the deputy leader, came along and painted as well. So I appreciate what you're saying about cost, but I suppose I can reassure you that the day I enjoyed painting at Walnut Close did not detract from me working at least my weekly hours.
Okay, thank you very much for that reassurance. I did notice in the table at the end of the document, there's quite a few things that have got a 0 figure against them. So Walnut Close temporary supported accommodation and Market Street improvements, for example. So I was just wondering why some of those figures have got a 0. If they're things that we feel we've achieved, why would we not add a figure to demonstrate what that achievement was? Councillor Brooks.
Hold on. I think this might be anticipated moving forward. I'll look for officers to help me with Market Street office improvements, but when I look at Market Street meeting facility optimisation, Shaw House exit, members should be aware, and I don't think it's a secret, that we're looking to get more commercial income from Shaw House through conferencing. And we can't do that if we're actually sending officers over there a lot of the time. So that's in progress. It's 0 at the moment because they're still working over there. Chestnut Walk we're working on a programme for it coming forward. So the one about Market Street, can you pick that up, Gabrielle?
Yes, of course. So the one for the Market Street improvements and also the one for the Laburnum Centre, they are essentially projects that my team facilitated the delivery of that were a key success factor for delivery of other projects within the programme. So for instance, with the Laburnum Centre, we essentially flipped that building to make it habitable for the office staff who were currently at Walnut Close for their place of work. And so that kind of £500,000-600,000 saving was contingent on us being able to fulfil that project. So it hasn't realised a saving in and of itself, but it's unlocked one. And it would be the same for the Market Street optimisation in the sense that it was a project that the team have been working on in order to enhance meeting space capacity within Market Street so that we are able to take advantage of commercialisation opportunities at Shaw House. So in and of itself, no saving, but we couldn't get any saving or any income generation without it having happened.
All right, scrolling down.
Sorry, Chair, can I just come back
sorry,
in on that before you give the
please do.
Does that not then imply that actually there's a cost there rather than a saving? Because you've got a cost to provide one so that you can save somewhere else. This is what I mean about having the absolute detail on everything that it costs to provide any of the improvements or any service, because if you've got a cost there, it needs to be
Absolutely, Councillor Sumner, and that is again, it's probably presentationally how I've decided to put this forward. But of course, those individual figures for that work has been seen by members. It has been kind of subject to a full business case and has been scrutinised. I think in the case of the Laburnum Centre, you were talking about a kind of a capital outlay of less than £10,000, which was absorbed within existing facilities budgets. So yes, it's real money that was spent, but it wasn't additional money that was sought in terms of kind of, it wasn't new money. It was money that we'd already accounted for in terms of maintaining assets that we have as a council, one of which is the Laburnum Centre. But yes, you don't have kind of all the nuts and bolts of how all of these projects worked, but I can obviously reassure you that that is in place and that those costs have been reflected and obviously spent in some cases.
Yeah, I get that, and I get that we're looking at a summary, but I think it's important slices of information that need to be part of the biggest picture, because it rightly has the potential to be the case in a large number of projects. And the longer this programme goes on, and let's be honest, we can see that it will be an ongoing, why would it stop? Things are not suddenly going to get reversed. We're not suddenly be getting grants back again. It's going to be an ongoing requirement. And I do stress that I think that the importance of that absolutely is there and needs to be at forefront.
Okay, great, thank you. Just moving on to the business support review. You've talked about the centralisation of staff. Can you explain how you've decided who should go into that central team? And also, again, with regard to the net staffing costs, have you charted what the net staffing saving costs might be from that?
Yes, so in terms of how individual officers who may be in scope within the business support review has been decided, essentially within my team, I have a manager and 2 business analysts who have been going systematically around the council, shadowing staff, speaking to staff, adopting process models, understanding the nature of their work, the specific ins and outs of the transactions they undertake, and where those transactions are common or similar to practices, processes taking place in other parts of the organisation. That analysis has then been collated, and essentially we have mapped out where roles are similar across the organisation and therefore where a centralisation into new roles might be appropriate. So it has been a very data-driven, systematic analysis that's informed that. Apologies, what was the second half of your question, Councillor Culver?
So, yeah, I mean, I'm quite interested in how you've consulted with the staff and how you're mapping the cost of that. So if you're taking people who, say, for example, you've got a specialist doing finance in a particular team and you want to take that finance officer and put them into a central team, how are you assessing whether or not that's the right thing to do in terms of cost and also the benefits of doing that? You might have specialised staff working in a team on a particular thing and then they're being put in a central team. So have you looked at the pros and cons of doing that?
Very much so, but think about it another way. We talk about single points of failure. So if Children and Family Services has their own finance officer, all we're doing is bringing them, they may not even move their desk, but they will have a reporting line to the finance team. The likelihood is they'll continue to do the role, but think about the resilience we now have, both to support that person if they're a bit overworked from the central finance team, or bring them into the finance team, not necessarily physically, to assist if they have a bit of spare time. That's the efficiency gain that we will see right across the authority. Now, we haven't yet. We've said what we think the savings will be. We'll monitor them. But, you know, one of the reasons for Ridgeway is to try and avoid single points of failure, and there are too many here, and we can fix this without Ridgeway by this centralisation.
Sorry, excuse me, Chair. Can I add to that, please?
Yeah.
So, as a live example, of what Councillor Brooks has just mentioned there. Within the adult social care team, there is an East team, a Central team, and a Western team. They each are cover functions within those localities. And as part of the review that Gabrielle and her team have completed, we figured out that each of those departments in those areas had a process, but they were interacting with the same software in different ways during that process. So you had 3 teams working completely differently. By standardizing the way that that team has been able to work, we've been able to standardize handoffs within other departments within the organization and therefore get quicker and slicker at what we do. And by doing that, we've been able to standardize a lot of the administration there as well. So it isn't just centralizing of corporate administration services, it's standardizing how the functions within the organization as well. And that's just one example. And I'm sure Gabrielle will attest that there are countless examples of that. So even though we're just getting to the consolidation aspect now of the business support review, there have been procedures and efficiencies and policies that have been streamlined continuously for the last 2 years as a result of that review.
And when you've gone around doing the interviews and the one-to-ones, etc., have you taken feedback from the staff on board when you've decided whether or not to proceed and how to proceed with the project?
Yes, we absolutely have, and also the process models that the team have put together have also been validated by the relevant service areas. So we're confident that they are accurate because the very officers who are on the ground undertaking those processes have said, yes, that accurately captures what I do, how I do it, how long it takes me to do it, and how frequently I do it in any given day.
Okay. So have you decided at all, like, not to bring some people into that centralised project because you've decided it probably wouldn't work?
Yes, there have been some roles where their subject matter was deemed not appropriate for a centralised model, sometimes because of the confidentiality and nature of their work, and sometimes because of the partnership working with external partners such as Thames Valley Police.
Yeah, okay, thank you. It talks about natural wastage, which I find an unfortunate phrase. I think we could probably use a kinder phrase, you know. I mean, I assume by that we're referring to people who retire or decisions not to go ahead with recruiting to previous jobs, etc. But that's just a point that I'll make. There's very specific figures in here about spending. So, for example, Walnut Close Children's Family Time Project, it talks about £14,044, and it goes on to say estimated savings or avoided costs of £120,000 to £140,000. So the budget is very specific, but the savings are not so specific. So I'm just wondering if we could get a little bit more detail on that in the future as we go forward with that. And again, business as usual staff costs included in that as well. So looking at the figure in the table about Walnut Close temporary accommodation, so I'm not sure that the figures add up, whether it's net of the cost, which was £112,000. Let's just have a look. So the budget of £86,000 overspent by £26,000.
Yes, so the original budget was 60, we ended up spending 86. So that's the differentiation there. I mean, what I can easily get you and provide after the meeting is a breakdown as to how that saving is made up, because it is a combination of kind of outright savings, cost avoidance, and additional income from government in terms of housing benefit. Okay. So those all add up to kind of constitute, you know, a net benefit to the council.
Okay. I was going to ask about the resource centres as well, but Councillor McKinnon has covered that off. On the place service improvement plan, I understand this was specifically about planning, and that we spent in the region of £50,000 on consultancy fees to look at this piece of work. And it's now been decided that the new office holder will take that forward. So can you clarify whether that was indeed a £50,000 cost? And when you're totalling up cost benefits, are you including that?
So the £50,000 you refer to was spent before the transformation programme came in, I believe, back in 2022 by a previous senior officer. So I haven't kind of been in charge of that or had any involvement with that. As I've kind of said within the report, I would anticipate that Philippa Venables, who is the service director over housing and development, would be taking this forward. When this was originally put into the programme, there wasn't a senior officer in place, and then there was a period of absence for senior officers in that part of the council. But going forward, I would anticipate it will start at pace. The other thing I would obviously point out, which is detailed within the report, is that in spite of that police service improvement plan not having moved forward, there have been strides within the planning space in terms of service improvements, mainly relating to the Plan X software and digitisation. And I believe that has had a significant impact on the backlog of applications and the pace with which we determine applications, which again is a benefit to the economy, it's a benefit to residents, and it's a benefit to the customer.
Okay. So if that £50,000 was spent before you came into your role, why is it in this transformation document if it was never a transformation thing anyway?
It was the intention that that work that had been done would be used as that kind of starter for 10, a bit of a roadmap for what would become a transformation programme. But again, as I said, with senior officers who are subject matter experts within planning not being in place at the time at which I would have had capacity to start on this project, it hasn't progressed. And there are clear reasons for that. But equally, obviously, I think as you'll see within the report, the capacity that I did have was well used on a variety of other projects.
Okay, thank you. Regarding care homes, it says members recognised that most local authorities didn't directly operate their own care homes. My recollection is that not all members agreed with this proposal to go ahead with trying to find a different provider for the care homes. Can I ask, please, what the likelihood is of that going ahead? I think it's down as being in progress or in delivery. What's the kind of percentage likelihood that we will go ahead with that, please?
I'm really not. I think it would probably prejudice the procurement process that's going on if I were to give you an answer. There's a procurement process going on. I don't particularly want interested parties to know what my level of confidence is, up or down, as to whether that will prove to work. We've got to go through that procurement process. We've had advice from Savills on the homes and their how tempting they will be to the private sector. I think we've got to wait and see. I'm sorry, Chair.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I'm just conscious that when the council made the decision to try to find an alternative provider, presumably we wouldn't have put money in the revenue budget for that because we anticipated finding a different provider. So what impact has not being able to do that within the time frame anticipated? What impact has that had on our revenue budget? And again, are we going to incorporate that into our calculations as to whether or not transformation saved us money in the time frame anticipated?
So, Chair, we did anticipate success. I'd rather plan for success than plan for failure. But in the event, we didn't get them away. That did put a strain on the revenue budget. I think the Directorate coped pretty well with that in their outturn of last year. And in this year, they're bearing down, as I said earlier, on the 2 million that we anticipated, and it's in all the figures of achieving. So, yes, it didn't work to plan in terms of finding an alternative provider. That can still be achieved.
Okay. And it says here, forecasted adult social care savings of approximately 1.3 million. Is that in addition to the 2 million, or is that part of it? And is that a one-off saving, or is that an annual saving that we anticipate?
So I'm going to ask Sharon to answer. She's whispering to me, and I think the follow-up, you might sort of take it as well.
Okay. There's a just over £1.2 million saving in the current financial year relating to care homes.
Great. Thank you very much for that.
Of which I think 600k is already forecast as being achieved.
Yeah.
Without the acquisition of them by another provider.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. With recruitment and retention, there's some great news in here about how the website has improved the number of people who are applying for jobs, and more people's applications have been completed without being abandoned. But there's not any statistics in there about how we are measuring whether it's achieving its objectives in terms of retention. And I wonder if you could comment on that, please.
Well, retention is down to about 11% from 13%. It's coming through in the next personnel report. So it may not be in this report, but if retention is improving, and it is, I contend, and I put it to you, that I believe that's to do with our, the employment value proposition, the quality and the quality of the offering, if you like, the candidate experience as they come through. Equally, now you see, you're talking about something I know a lot about. And normally you're talking about something I maybe don't know a lot about, who knows. But on recruitment, it is a fact that when somebody joins, their first day is so vital. They're so vital to how they land. The induction program has to be good. And part of our improved induction program, which is not in there, business as usual, we've improved the induction program, that myself and the deputy come down and introduce ourselves to, in this room, up to 30 new joiners every couple of months, and we welcome them. We ask them if they're being treated well, if they've landed well. So recruitment is not the issue per se, it's induction, and the way you treat people helps with retention. It's a long-winded answer, but there isn't a straight KPI except retention rates.
Okay, thank you for that. When it comes to homeschool transport, we had a consultant that came in to do some work. So we're saying we're going to save £500,000. Have we factored in the cost of that consultant into that saving?
So in terms of that consultancy report, again, it was one that was commissioned before the transformation programme came into being. That said, the cost of that was £15,000. So it wasn't, it is a good amount of money, but it's nothing in comparison to the figure anticipated.
Okay. And also the cost of the dedicated transport review officer. Again, are we including the cost of that officer in our net saving?
Yes, we are. A business case was compiled before that officer was appointed, and they were appointed on an investor save basis, and the route optimisation that they have undertaken has kind of made up the vast majority of what we've saved. So yes, those are net figures.
Okay, great. Thank you. It talks about generating additional income as well. Fair payer scheme charges were increased. Have you got figures on that as well, tracking that?
So yes, we have, and those were approved as part of the budget setting process back in March. Yeah.
Great. Okay. And I will not labour much longer. I'm just going down to the table. So we've covered off business support, resource centres. We're going to be getting an announcement. Place service improvement. We've talked about that. And the care homes and the home to school transport. So in total, at the end of those columns then, we've got 3 million, and that's the anticipated total saving. And some of that's in delivery and some of it's achieved. Just going up and down.
Forgive me, Chairman, we've got 7.6 million. Please look at the asterisk below the table.
So about the employee value proposition.
Correct.
Yeah. I think it would be quite useful if we had a little bit more detail on this table, and I'm conscious we were given some more information this evening, which we haven't had a chance to digest. So this transformation cost tracker. I think maybe if colleagues could go away and come up with something that's a little bit more detailed and answer some of the questions that we've asked tonight, that would be quite helpful.
I thought we'd answered a lot of them. I'm sure we've captured the ones we haven't.
Yeah. It would be quite useful for us, I think, though, from a scrutiny point of view, to have all of that in one place. Because I'm conscious, if somebody said to me right now, has transformation saved us money? I wouldn't be able to give them a straight answer.
But you've got
Whereas if I had a table, I'd be able to go, OK, we've done this, we haven't done that, etc. It's cost us this. This is the opportunity cost of having got rid of the assets, etc.
But you're looking at 7.6 million of savings on the table, Chair.
Mm-hmm. But the costings, we haven't got costings.
I'll ask Shannon to circulate something on the cost of the programme.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. So I think in conclusion, Councillor Reid said it would be good to have a baseline business case for this and maybe regular reports on how we're doing with this. Councillor McKinnon, I think you said something also about what you would like to make as a recommendation going forwards. Was it about the resource centres or something else? I'm just looking at my notes.
I don't think so. I think
No.
my point was that the saving that's in here for resource centres cannot be the saving that comes from the description of the resource centres, because it's the same from the budget. So,
yeah,
you know, that cost saving should not be in there because we can't scrutinise what it is. It's the budget cost saving.
okay. I'm also conscious there's a couple of parts of the draft financial statements as well that relate to transformation. So it talks about clear business cases, demonstrable benefits, systems for robust and appropriate project management, updated improved methodology and appropriate prioritisation tool. So I think it would be good if we could get some more information in the long term about those things as well.
Yeah, absolutely happy to do that, Councillor Culver. I think one of the things that is coming out via the task group that is being chaired by Councillor Reid is that we are aware of the scope to improve our processes in this space and are absolutely doing so. I mean, I'd anticipate we can talk more about that through the task and finish group and then report back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I would be keen, members, to make a recommendation this evening that we do ask for that more detailed information about the costs, because we've had a lot of great information tonight about various projects and what's been achieved. But like I say, if I was asked right now, has it made a saving? And that is the core objective of transformation. I wouldn't, in all honesty, be able to give you a straight answer to that question. So if I could recommend that that information is provided to us so we can see very clearly.
We will supply that information, but I'll give an assurance to you, the Scrutiny Committee, and to the people at home. We haven't spent £7 million to deliver £7 million of savings. That I can assure you. So we'll give you that, the detail.
Okay. And if we could receive that as soon as possible, I think that would be very helpful. Yeah, and I think to get progress reports periodically as well on transformation. Yeah, sorry, Councillor Coyle.
Councillor Culver, I'm sorry, I'm a bit muddled. This document that we have here, is that, I'm sorry, I might have got completely the wrong end of the stick, but it says transformation cost tracker. So, I mean, I know we only just got it today, but is that not the information that we're talking about? But we've not had time. I mean, I think that what would, maybe it's not, in which case, correct me if I'm wrong. If it is, then I suppose what would have been helpful was to have this presented alongside what we've been talking about, rather than getting one and then the other. To be honest, I can barely read because I don't have any class.
Yeah, because I mean, it mentions in this cost tracker things like 2 business analysts, corporate landlord, accommodation review manager. So it mentions various things that don't necessarily translate across into what we've got in this document. And I just think it would be useful if we had it in one place and we could see the costs and the benefits all in one place and say, okay, we can see what we've spent and we can definitely say with a surety that we have saved money. Councillor Brooks.
No argument at all from this side. I suggest that we do provide that, obviously, as a sort of, you know, here's the cost, here's the outcome, but that's not an end in itself. All those savings will continue, not necessarily the same rate, may go up, may go down. Given the policy development group we're putting in place about the new transformation, you might want us to come back in January, February, I don't know when you'll meet in the new year, and not only to give some further assurance on looking back, but also looking forward.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful. Okay, so can I recommend when we have a meeting in the new year, we get an update on progress with this? Are members content with that if I propose that as a recommendation? Any objections? No, okay. And then, yeah, if we could have that detailed information, I'd be very grateful. And we'll look at that in the new year and then assess whether or not we want to continue to get periodic updates on that. Yeah, I think that'd be really useful. Okay, good. Yeah, and if we can include the information about the assets and the business as usual staff and all that sort of thing as well, I think that'd be really useful. And, you know, if I'm being a bit pernickety about this, we are in financial straits as a council and we do need to be very careful with our scrutiny of this programme, I think, to satisfy ourselves that it's definitely achieving what it's setting out to achieve. Councillor Sumner.
I really have to give assurance that it is achieving a huge amount. And I wrestle with the financial difficulties every moment of the day. This is giving great value for money, but we will provide the information.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you. Councillor Sumner.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't disagree with anything you've said. I think if you wanted to put a positive spin on this, Councillor Brooks likes to put a positive spin on things, then what we're looking at in the main is investor safe. So let's look at what we're investing.
Yeah.
As an authority. Let's put the positive light on. It's what are we investing? If we can see what we're investing, then we can see what we're saving.
Yeah, precisely. Thank you. Great. Okay, that brings us to the end of that item then. Thank you very much indeed, colleagues, who've come along to present on that this evening. So our next item, is it not libraries? Oh, it is libraries next. Yeah, great. So libraries, thank you very much indeed for your patience, colleagues who've been waiting for us to get onto this item this evening. I'll hand over to Councillor Foote to present on this and Fliss Harrison. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Could I first of all say that I'm delighted we've got our whole library team with us this evening, and I think we've all learned a great deal about transformation, actually. Seriously, though, it gives me great pleasure to introduce this report to the Scrutiny Commission. I believe the libraries team of West Berkshire officers and volunteers have delivered an exceptional service to West Berkshire residents against an extremely challenging financial backdrop, as we've just been hearing. Going back in 2016-17, the previous administration commissioned a review of library service, leading to a significant transformation of that service. As a result, the service experienced a budget reduction of £690,000, a 42% reduction in library staff from 42 to 24 full-time equivalents, the closure of Wash Common Library, now incidentally successfully run by the community up there, and the reduction in the mobile library service from 2 vehicles to 1. One of the responses to this review was to commit to more partnership working with local communities and with town and parish councils. The town and parish councils were asked for voluntary contributions of £1 per head of population towards bridging the revenue gap in the library service. In the financial year of 2022 to 2023, only £34,000 was raised in voluntary contributions out of a possible £150,000. Our administration deemed this funding model to be both unfair and unworkable and has now been dispensed with. The mobile library service for the district was discontinued at the beginning of this financial year. In the year 2024 to 2025, there were just 239 customers. The vehicle was at the end of its life and a replacement vehicle would be needed. We decided to go for a pop-up library and community bookshelf model instead. Pop-up libraries are ideally suited for the rural areas that used to be served by the mobile library. Residents could reserve and collect books, and other outreach council services can be brought in to the library visitors. These additional services can be invaluable to parish councils. We'll hear about West Berkshire's Let's Talk initiative later. Bespoke menus of prices can be put to the parishes and purchased based on the frequency and type of service they would like to have. In just the first quarter of this year, a total of 124 visitors have already used the 3 pop-up libraries so far commissioned, half the number of the total year's user figures for the mobile library in Q1. We expect this figure to grow substantially as the year progresses, as more parishes sign up for pop-up libraries and community bookshelves, and that those are rolled out. So far, we have pop-up libraries in Compton, Basildon and Leckhampstead, with negotiations at an advanced stage with 3 other parish councils. Our library officers can provide more detailed information to the committee on pop-up libraries and community bookshelves if required. As I've already mentioned, the pop-up libraries provide an ideal focus for reaching out to the more rural and potentially isolated communities within the district. We have already had pension credit drop-ins at pop-ups. Recently, I learnt from the Director of Public Health at West Berkshire Council in his draft annual report that approximately 1 in 5 eligible parents in our district are not claiming early start vouchers, leading to £70,720 of unclaimed food vouchers. This is exactly the type of information we can provide to mothers through the relevant officers being on hand at pop-ups and of course also at our fixed libraries. The 8 permanent libraries we have continue to do well. Attendances are up in all of them, as you'll see from the report, and Pangbourne and Lambourne Parish Councils have paid for additional library opening hours, which has been extremely well received. This has led to significant increases in attendance in those venues, again, as you can see in the report. E-library services have been rationalised to just one provider, leading to not just savings, but ease of use and less confusion for customers. The libraries provide many additional community services, and our volunteers and permanent staff do really well in encouraging these. There's much more information obviously contained in the report, which I hope everyone's read, but I'll stop now. But before I do, I'd just like to reference Councillor Reid's point about key performance indicators for social benefits. I'm lucky enough to be soon chairing the Health and Wellbeing Board, and I can say to Councillor Reid that in public health, they have very good metrics so that you can actually quantify in financial terms those social benefits. And we are engaged in doing that in the library service. Thank you very much, Chair. I'm happy to, for our team to answer any questions the committee might have.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Foote. Are there any questions? Councillor Macro.
Thank you. I was very pleased to see the library trend data, section 5.3, showing a year-on-year increase in the number of physical visits and number of library loans. I was wondering how that compared with the national picture.
Thanks very much for your question. I'll hand over to my library colleagues who might be able to give us a steer on that. Thank you.
I think I'll have to take that one away to get some data to you, Councillor Macro.
Thank you.
Councillor Reid.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really positive report and some really good bits and pieces, but we're here to scrutinise. 7.2 e-library services. I was aware of this, but not the e-audiobooks. As a subscriber to a large delivery company that also does a lot of e-audio books and bits and pieces, it costs me quite a bit of money a month. I'm wondering if we can promote this amongst the residents of West Berkshire a bit more.
Yes, certainly. We did actually have a campaign when we changed provider at the start of the financial year, and we have done previously as well. And in fact, we did have a campaign, and it was called Still Paying for Audiobooks, taking that approach to really encourage people like yourself to take advantage of the new library offer. But it's really pleasing that we've now just got one provider, and we're offering e-audiobooks, e-books, e-newspapers and e-magazines just through one platform, because I think it was slightly confusing for residents before, and it was more difficult for us to market because we were saying you could use this provider or you could do this provider. It's much easier now. We have done marketing, but we obviously need to do more marketing, and we'll take that point on board and schedule to do some more marketing to promote the service.
Thank you so much.
Councillor Matharaj.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, reiterate, Councillor Rees said it's a positive report, and thanks, Councillor Foot and the library team. Particularly, I know Mrs. Harrison come along to parish meetings. I attend some of them where you gave a positive presentation in terms of, and I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Yeah, I've seen you as well. So, I'm not I have don't have any questions on the services, but just looking at the numbers in 5.7, there is a revenue budget shortfall for 2024-25. The question is, how are we aiming to contain that shortfall or make up that shortfall? And a subsequent question for me is that if that's a shortfall, is there an impact to the service going forward?
The council actually increased the budget for libraries this year to cover the amount which was previously set as an income target. So that has actually been covered off. So the new chargeable services that we're offering to town and parish councils, they are over and above the base budget for libraries.
I can just add, if I may, Chair, to Councillor Amathraj, that if you look in 5.9, you'll see that an extra £92,900 was added to the 25-26 financial year libraries revenue budget to cover this. Thank you.
Councillor Brooks, did you want to come on in this particular
Right.
question? Yeah,
Right.
that's fine.
Is on the question. Whether the programme of saying to parish or town council, would you do a voluntary contribution of £1 per resident, was the right policy or not, it led to quite a few not paying anything. So how was it right to take money from those who would pay, because those who didn't pay still got the same access to the library services? That wasn't right. And what was happening was the library service was £90,000 down at least on the 1st of April when the new financial year came into being. So we put that right.
Thank you. Councillor Sumner and then Councillor Wollaston.
Thank you, Chair. That's an interesting point, because I was sitting on my parish council having that conversation. And the conversation was very much a case of, but what are our parishioners actually doing? Are they actually using the service? Should we be contributing an amount of money for them per capita when actually hardly any of them are using the service? For us in Calcutt, to give it its shortened name, it's either to Thiel or it was the mobile library service that used to go to Sainsbury's at Calcutt. Other than that, and I hate to say this, it's across the border but up into Tyler's library, or it's into town and use the Reading library, neither of which I want to become the norm. I want to make that perfectly clear. But it was very much a case of what information, what evidence, what demographic detail could be given to the parishes to make sure that they were fully aware of how many of their parishioners were actually using it, how many of their residents were interested in using it but couldn't use it. And I think you mentioned marketing. Marketing for me is very much a two-way street, because you can go out there and you can sell yourself, but you also need to identify those that are coming to you to find out why they're coming to you. And I think that's quite important information if you can gather it, because we as district councillors, we can then take that to our parishes, and we can try to complete that loop and hopefully then boost it. Nigel, did you want to come in?
Thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Sumner. One of the things I'm quite keen on doing is, if I can, to get along to parish council meetings so that, you know, I can, if you like, do a bit of marketing, if you like, for the fabulous services that can be provided. But also those are very instructive because it allows me to take information from the parish council back. And you've already heard from our colleague Councillor Amrithraj that he recognised Elizabeth, you know, from parish council meetings. I mean, we do try and get out and we do try and listen as well. And that's not counting the emails that come in as well from not just councillor colleagues, but also from parish council clerks. So we're starting from, I think the term has been said before, from sort of ground zero, really, and we're building up. And obviously all of that information informs us so that we can make a better offering as time goes by.
Yeah, I accept that. But my point stands that the marketing element is a two-way street and you need to do whatever you can. Going out to parishes, I've got no problem with that. I suspect most parishes, especially the larger ones, would welcome it. The smaller ones, we know sometimes struggle to make sure, and therefore you look at grouping and you can make the best of it. I'm not teaching you how to do your job. But it's an important part of the information stream that I think might then substantiate what you're trying to achieve, which is better contributions from parishes. If they haven't got the information, if they can't see the benefit, then they will struggle. So I say it as a parish councillor as much as a district councillor. I've got two hands coming at me now. Go on.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for those comments. Just to say that we are able to track who is using our libraries, and we do have that data. So if there is information that you specifically want, we will be able to gather that information for you to tell you postcode data of our users that we have on record. So yeah, we can, I'm sure Elizabeth and Fliss will be able to tell you more about that, but absolutely we do have that information. So any specific questions that you may have, we may not have it right here, right now, but we'll be able to get back to you on that.
No, that's fine, and thank you for confirming it. Like I said, this is not specifics, and this is not a criticism. This is all about making sure that actually, if it very much in the same as the previous report, if you've got the information out there, let's share it. You'll need to group it up. You don't want to go too specific, but let's have the information that allows all of us as representatives to go out to our parishes. Did you want to come back in, Felicity?
Thank you. I was just going to say we've just sent around our annual report for libraries for 24-25 to all the parishes, along with a short email just explaining about all the new services again and what we've achieved so far, hoping to promote that to all the parishes and get more interest.
Brilliant. Thank you. One thing I will say, and I don't want to make this all about the same thing, but one thing I will say about that is different parishes have very different streams of communication with their residents. Mine puts out every other month a newsletter, for example, as well as having a pretty good social media presence. So again, with the people that you're engaging, you need to know what their capabilities are as well. So be mindful of that. I'll move on to the only other point that I'd add, which was around the pop-up libraries and whether there was a criteria for target locations. Mindful again that being in Calcutta, we've got Thiel not too far away. Would that be considered an area that you wouldn't necessarily identify immediately?
Thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, I'll just kick off and then hand over to Fliss, who can give you more detailed answers. But our library officer that actually drove the mobile library around the district before it was taken off the road has a lot of experience and knows an awful lot of people out in the district. And that was invaluable information because she could feed that back to us and we could sort of try and locate where a good spot might be. Now, we know, for example, I think Fliss will correct me if I'm wrong on this, but if you look at a place like Leckhampstead, there are lots of little settlements around there. So, you know, if Leckhampstead is the hub, it might then provide a nodus for the little settlements out there for people not to have to travel too far to get to the pop-up when it's there at a village coffee morning and such like. But if I may, I'll hand over to Fliss and she can take that up.
Just 2 points really. We don't have any criteria at all. We're open to discussion with any parish, and so please do let us know, and we'll work. It's really interesting that one of our pop-ups is in a church as quite a different location, and then we've got 2 in village halls. But just please do talk to us, and we'll talk to you about what you want and work with you to achieve that.
Councillor Wollaston, you're being very patient, but I see Councillor Brooks'
Well,
hand
from the
just
point
raised.
of view, Councillor Sumner, that if there is a desire for one in Calcott, we'd love to provide it in perhaps the Calcott Parish Hall. And when the clerk is in, we can be there in attendance with that pop-up library. And I'd like to see 20 of them, frankly, because of this rurality of this area, but including the urban areas of Calcott and Tilehurst, where I am next week, talking about the Reading Opportunistic Initiative. Bring it on, please. Bring it on.
Sorry, I didn't cover my second point. I was just going to say that when we did do a trial pop-up, and we did deliberately target Compton for the trial for the pop-up, because it was in that northern area of the district, which wasn't covered by any library buildings, and we thought it would be one of the areas that was really more affected by losing the mobile library. But that was a sort of a strategic decision to do that. But apart from that, we're open to developing them in all areas of the district.
Thank you. And again, I can understand those sort of areas being looked at because of everything that you've just said. The situation that where I am is slightly different, and I recognise that. But thank you, Councillor Brooks, and look forward to seeing you at the meeting.
Great. Councillor Wollaston, thank you for your patience.
As a member of the Land Board, we have a very good library, which is obviously mainly run by volunteers. As a parish council, has always been very happy to make the payment, although very happy not to have to. I just wanted to give them credit for the pop-up libraries. I went to the one at the Campstead a few weeks ago, and it was seriously impressive. I'd encourage other members to try and get them in their own area.
Could I thank you very much for that comment, Councillor Wollaston. I can't tell you enough how much the team has worked on this. We're very fortunate because we have Elizabeth Beverley as our library manager now. She's a fairly new post. And what that has done has freed up Elizabeth to do a lot of the, if I can put it this way, spade work on looking at where these pop-ups can be delivered and community bookshelves. And if I may, I will just mention that I always get this acronym wrong, so I've got to read it out, that the Chief Cultural, the Chief Culture and Leisure Officers Association used West Berkshire Council's pop-up and community bookshelf rollout as a showcase in their recent publication, I think. So, the work has been acknowledged as being of a good standard, and we can build on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll just say on the Compton Library, that's in my ward, and that's been very well received. The only lesson that I would say could be learnt from that is to talk to them a bit earlier about the financial contribution that you might need towards it. And I'd just like to thank the staff that have been involved in that. And other members have mentioned about how we ought to go along and visit the existing ones and see how they're running. I think it might also be a good idea to invite parish councillors in the areas where you would like to set up pop-up libraries and say, come and have a look and see how they run, because there's no substitute for actually going and having a look at it. So if you're thinking of putting one in a particular place, get those parish councillors to come along and have a look at the existing ones, tell them how much it will cost, what the benefits are, etc.
Chair, may I just come back on one final point? And again, it comes back to the community involvement with these outreach programmes, and also actually our fixed library. And if I may, I'll hand over to my service director, April Perbody, who could just talk a little bit about Let's Talk and one of these initiatives that West Berkshire is rolling out. Thanks.
Thank you. So part of our expansion of our library service and looking at how we can better serve our residents, we've developed a community outreach programme in West Berkshire called Let's Talk, where we take trusted information, advice and support out to our residents across a variety of different venues across the district, and using our libraries as a great hub for delivering those services. So we're still early days. We only launched the programme in May, and Rhys Lewis is our officer that's working really closely with our library service to deliver the Let's Talk outreach programme within the libraries. But we also visit the pop-up library. We've been over to Compton, for example, and we're really trying to grow that outreach, information and advice support service across the district. We're hoping soon that we will actually be able to have some of our customer service team within the libraries on a regular basis, so that our residents can come and get that support and advice directly from our customer service team rather than having to come into the council. So we're always looking for those opportunities to use our libraries to best serve the needs of our residents, as well as giving a traditional library service. And I suppose one thing to say as well about our new funding model was that the previous funding model was just paying for the service as was, but now this new model that we've got means that we really can develop our offer out to residents, because the new funding model allows for us to deliver new services, whereas the old funding model was just paying for the services as was. So I think it's a really positive gain for our residents.
Councillor Brooks.
We're all very proud of our libraries. I visited every one of them, and there's a passion about them from the staff to deliver great services. But what April Pebbody has just talked about, and Felicity Harrison, is turning them into information points. You could call them a different name, a community hub, but it's where people can go and get information in those libraries without having to come into here if they're not on the internet. And I'm asked a lot by bodies like SIPFA, MHCLG, what are your red lines? And I say, libraries, we're not closing them. We're not closing any. And to be fair to the officers, they come with financial pressures and say, would you consider closing a library? Say no, but let's consider moving them more into that community information point, that community hub, that place you go. And this will make a lot of sense within a Ridgeway Council should that come about. Thank you.
I think we should praise all of the volunteers who've been involved in the libraries as well, because I'm conscious, for example, that Wash Common Library closed a few years ago, and that's reliant on volunteers now. And we often find with these services over time that we're more and more reliant on volunteers. So I think we should take an opportunity this evening to thank them for the service that they've done to the community too. On the new library members, it says for the year 24-25 that it's actually declined slightly. Do we know why that might be? So it's gone down to 5,627.
Yes, I'll take that one. I think the previous year was an absolutely bumper year for library membership. And I think we at Lambourne Library, we had a targeted programme of working very closely with the school and getting all the classes to come down to the library and join up all the children. And I think that was the main reason why that year was really, really successful, and there was a slight dip in the following year, but we want to do more to build on that.
Thank you very much. I think the at-home library service is great, bearing in mind the lack of mobility and the isolation that some local residents have. So I think your flexible approach, your general flexible approach, I think is to be welcomed. It did mention about community cafes, and I just wondered what your plans are for reaching out to them, because I'm conscious that a couple that I've spoken to haven't heard from the library services for a while. And I know Speen Community Cafe used to benefit from the mobile library, which we know doesn't exist anymore. So what are your plans to systematically reach out to those existing community hubs and make sure that they know about your services?
Yes, we certainly do plan to do that. When we were going through the process of preparing to close the mobile library, we, in our equalities impact assessment, we did, and the questionnaire that we had the consultation for residents, we did ask for anyone who wanted us to do a community outreach visit to their venue to let us know. And we got a number of contacts through that. And we've been systematically working through those contacts and setting up outreach visits. But if there are any community cafes that we're not currently reaching, we'd be really happy to hear from them, and we can sort something out.
Great.
I was just going to say that Rhys Lewis, as part of the Let's Talk programme, regularly goes to the Speen Community Cafe as well as some of the others across the district. So we have that really good link in now to those community settings that we probably didn't have in the past. So we've got Rhys there, so we can really easily link up with the libraries, because that's what we're trying to do in community services, is really link everything together so that we listen to what people that come to those cafes, community cafes, what is it they want, what is it they need, and then we can feed that back into the services. So it's really building on those links and getting all our services work together so that we deliver really excellent service and outreach service as well to our residents.
Thank you. And then just on the costs, so the budget was increased to 1 million, 1.4 million. And then it says that you've raised 14 million, sorry, not 14 million, 14,000 as well. Can you, so basically, are you, because you did ask, I think, for quite a lot more money than what you had previously. I think the council had asked for 92,000 originally, it went up to 150,000. Is this like a sustainable investment for the long term in the libraries, do you feel?
Yes, the 92,000 put us back on a level playing field where we could deliver the base service, but we had an income target to achieve that amount through the voluntary contributions from town and parish councils previously. Yeah. We weren't achieving that amount, and the amount of money we were getting in was diminishing year on year. I think in the last financial year we only achieved about £38,000. So I think that this has put the library service on a much better financial footing.
Okay, great, thank you. Any more questions, members? No. Any recommendations that we'd like to make? Feedback, formal feedback? No? Okay, thank you very much indeed for your time, and thank you for your patience, because I'm conscious that you've sat through some fairly long agenda items beforehand. Members, I'm conscious that we have been here for 2 hours. Would people like a quick comfort break? Yeah, okay. If I can say 5 minutes, let's be disciplined and get back to the table. And yeah, great, thank you. Councillor Reid, sorry. Okay, great. Right, welcome back everyone after our much needed comfort break. We're going to move on now to agenda item 8, which is capital financing performance report. And I'd like to invite Councillor Brooks and Shannon Coleman-Slaughter to present to us, please.
Well, I'm happy to introduce it. I mean, the portfolio holder is away. I'll do my best. You will see within the capital performance report, financing report, that we look like delivering £73 million worth of the capital programme. Members will know that I'm pressing to try and achieve more than 70 to 75% of the capital programme in year. This one looks like falling a bit short again. Certain things are brought forward, of course. We call it reprofiling. They're brought forward from other years and just roll into the next year. So that's a challenge for us to get that closer to 85% or so, which is where I think we should be. Where it's impacted, Chair, is when you get a project like Thiel railway station improvements of 3.8 million that has been sitting there for several years. Just keeps rolling forward and looks like you're failing to deliver a £3.8 million project. And that skews it a bit. What I will say though, and you'll tease it out of us and Shannon will say the same, it's important. You don't really need to tease that out of us because I'm going to tell you now. With the funding we're having to bring to bear to support the growing high needs block, that is impacting negatively on what we can afford to put in our capital programme. And it is possible, I'm not going to say too much about next year's budget, but it certainly won't be up around the 70 million mark because we have to fund it. Obviously, SIL, Section 106 comes to bear. But equally, we are being drawn into this ever-increasing underpinning financially of that growing high needs block. So anyway, the takeaways from this would be that we do expect to deliver about £70 million worth of it. And it's shown in the report. I will take questions and I will defer, if I may, to Shannon as well as I get questions. Thank you.
Great. Councillor Sumner.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, Councillor Brooks, you noted Thiel station developments. I share your pain on that one. I sat through years of delays from Great Western and Network Rail having conversations with each other. So I suppose my question is massive external influence on that. Nothing you can do. Spent the time having conversations with the LEP trying to justify keeping the money in my case and the officers that supported me. Are providers and our colleagues and partners able to keep up with our demand, and is that still an issue? So I know certainly through COVID, and I'm not trying to extend that beyond its useful life, but I know from time conversations with highways officers, for example, actually having the suppliers managing to delay, catch up, continue development was an ongoing battle. Has that changed? Is that still the case? Is there anything that can be done?
It's my view that it hasn't changed dramatically. There's an inflationary pitch in there. It's a labour shortage. It's why houses aren't getting built. Partly there's a planning issue on that as well. And of course, as you delay projects, they cost more because of the inflationary pressures on them. And that's another reason why we've got to deliver what we say we want to deliver in year. The 3.8 million, by the way, for the avoidance of doubt, and Councillor McKinnon knows this, is not sitting in some bank account somewhere waiting to be spent for years on end. That's not how we finance the capital programme. And I think people do, and I see our guests in the gallery tonight, think the Monks Lane project, the 3.8 million still sitting in a fund somewhere. It isn't. We tend to build the financing solution, if you like, as we invoke the project from SIL, from Section 106, from borrowing, some from government grants. And I think that's become a little bit confusing to people over the years. Long-winded way of saying we'll bring some pressure to bear wherever we can. There is now the Berkshire Prosperity Board. I will feed that into them. I wonder how much these bodies do listen. And you talk about Great Western Railway, Network Rail. I'll add Thames Water into that as well, if I may. It may be, and I'm going right off track, and I'll stop here in a minute, that a mayor may have more clout than a unitary authority. But I'll leave it there.
Councillor Matharaj.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll start with the question. I think there is a gap in the numbers, but that can be explained. I just wanted to clarify before I start in with the number of questions, because basically this is the kind of the report normally we focus on in the scrutiny to dwell into more. And particularly, I just want to follow up with more questions. But to start with, Chairman, the section 2.1, the reprofiling cost is 12.65 million, but in the appendix A, it's roughly 12.4. So there is a gap of roughly 200K there. So the list of projects listed there doesn't add up to that 12.65 million. So either the numbers correct or is that?
We'll defer to, I will phone a friend on this occasion, if I may. Shannon?
Do you want to put your mic on? Sorry.
So the appendix has major projects. So there's probably some minor other projects as well, which aren't listed, but I can go away and have a look at that.
Sure, that would be great because there is a gap between those two, roughly 200K. Chairman, if I may follow up with the question. So on the reprofiling itself, I know it says reprofiling, which is deferring that budget. Can we understand when it is being deferred, or which quarter of the year, or which year? Because the first line of that four-house corner explanation reasoning says it's been reprofiled to 26, 27. So it's the next year budget. So we don't have much of a details on the other projects. So that's the clarification I would like to request for. And a general observation or a point which we made in the Scrutiny Commission before in July as well. The underspend, let's call it underspend because it's a reprofiling in a different way. So it's an underspend. So a lot of these projects are crucial for the residents, and in any project governance board or place, we know underspent is loss of money, because that money will be taken away if you're not spending as a good project manager, but is also potentially a benefit lost. So I just wanted to understand for a quarter on quarter, I know this is for Q1, correct me on this one, because we are in almost end of Q2 as well. So there will be some kind of a request for underspend in Q2 as well. So we would like to know, but is it a occurrence every quarter on quarter where we are seeing millions of pounds underspend and it's going into the next quarter? So it's a delayed projects, or is it something for Councillor Brooks to take up on the overall governance and overall optimization things? I don't know. So just a number of questions there, but just on this reprofiling itself, I just want to focus more.
Chairman, I'm always aware that my members tend to ask me the toughest questions quite often, apart from perhaps Councillor McKinnon. I will ask Shannon to come back, and then I'll probably add something to it, Councillor Ramatraj.
As the year goes on, as in prior years, we will see more reprofiling in the year as information coming through budget managers, what they're expecting of those projects gets better and more robust during the year. So we would expect reprofiling to occur. As to whether it's millions, it might not. Ask me in 2 weeks, I'll probably know the answer to that. But historically, we do have reprofiling throughout the year, and we will reprofile into subsequent financial years.
No administration wants to not deliver the capital programme it's passed. But there are times where the slippage occurs, perhaps things outside of our control. So you go to procurement. and you don't get satisfactory bids. Or you go to procurement and you do get satisfactory bids, but then you can't agree the terms and conditions. You know all this, you've been there. So part of this is a natural part of the commercial world where you plan to do something and you can't get it done in the timescale that you'd like to. Does that help? There are reasons. It is not just slovenliness. It's never slovenliness. But I've given you examples of why things can slip.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Brooks. So just a suggestion for going forward to understand the impact, apart from the reasoning and having this reprofiling tab with the projects listed, can we please get for the Scrutiny Commission for next time when it comes to also explain where it reprofiled to and what is that impact is going to be? For example, if it is external funder, do we have a commitment to have that funding in place for the next quarter if it is reprofiled to or the next year, so we have an assurance that even though there are delays, we don't lose that money effectively or money taken away. So that's kind of added detail.
I think that's more a political or an administration decision rather than asking the Section 151 officer. We don't put it in there to fail. As I said, we don't plan for failure. Circumstances can change. Monk's Lane changed. There was 3.8 million in the budget, but it ain't going to be spent on that, and it was never in a bucket, as I say. So, generally speaking, I'll give you an assurance that even if it slips, we still intend to deliver it. Sometimes also the project is over 2, 3, 4 years. It can be like a new school. The Falkland School at the moment is 2 to 3 years. It will probably straddle. So I hope you accept that political administration assurance.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Chris Reid.
Thank you, Chair. Section 5.3, I think, talks about grant sums received, 3.5 million of additional grant sums. I'm not so much, as fellow scrutineers will know, a finance person. I'm much more a risk and resilience person. What's the risk of any grants being reprofiled from this year to next as from those outside grant bodies disappearing under use it or lose it type policies that Westminster seems so keen on?
Yes, that is frustrating. It is a risk. I will ask Shannon of any large ones she knows. The ones I've been aware of, the Calcott new 3G pitch, for instance, had to be spent by the end of the financial year, the end of last financial year, or that funding would have gone back to the UK's Prosperity Fund. I don't know about big ones, then I'll ask Shannon, but yes, you're right, it is a risk within the project plan. Shannon, anything to add to that?
Yeah, they are risks within the project plan. Most of our big grants are sort of annual reoccurring grants, so we get sums in and we allocate them to projects. If we're asking where I would think there may be a risk of paying something back, it can sometimes be around the energy projects. We might get specific funding for a specific energy project. But as a general rule, a lot of our grant funding is for a specific purpose, but not necessarily for a specific project. It's to develop an outcome, and we develop projects to deliver that outcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wollaston and then
Could I just look at the solar farm? Under section 5.6, it says the budget's 16 million. And then it goes on to say another 3 million on page 52. So is the total 19 million? And if so, has there been a revised business case? We did a detailed one when we were in the administration. I think the cost was estimated down at £12 million, and clearly it's gone through the roof, I'm sure largely because of building cost inflation. But I just want to be comfortable that we do actually have a good business case for this project with the increased costs. And just what are the increased costs?
you would like to answer, Shannon?
We had the original £16 million budget, and I think we've got slippage on top of it, which is where you get your budget figures from.
What I can give assurance, and watching it very carefully, is that, Councillor Wollaston, the business case is still strong, even with that increase in the implementation cost, the build cost.
Is there any possibility that we could perhaps see the revised business case?
No problem. No problem. We'll take that as an action.
Yes, thank you.
Councillor McKinnon.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Brooks, for stepping in for Councillor Cottingham. I know at the top of the report that it's not been signed off by the portfolio holder. I understand it's away, but has the report been appropriately reviewed and signed off by an executive member before appearing with us tonight?
I'm happy with it.
In which case, can I turn your attention to 5.6? It's the first sentence. The Council invests heavily to ensure that West Berkshire remains an affluent area that is prosperous, resilient and supportive of the most vulnerable residents. I think resilient and supportive of the most vulnerable residents is okay, but the council can do a lot of things, but I think investing to ensure that the district remains an affluent area that's prosperous is over-egging the pudding somewhat, isn't it?
Well, I don't think so, and I don't think you would have said so in administration either. By investing in our infrastructure, by investing in our roads, by investing in our built estate, our schools, our libraries, we become an attractive place for people to come and live and work and be affluent. So I don't accept the premise that we cannot impact that at all. And I think we impact it very positively because you and I agree this is a great place to work, live and, work, live and what was the other? There was three. You came out with it, work, live and moan. No, I'm not thinking of the Mars bar. I'm not thinking of the Mars bar. But anyway, work, live and enjoy life.
More pedantry later. Thanks, Chairman.
I'm just going to ask a couple of things before I come back to other members, if that's okay. It says in 5.11 about long-term borrowing to fund capital is 202 million. So by my calculations, we've got short-term borrowing of 267 and long-term of 202. So, sorry, the total is 267 and the long-term is 202. So am I correct in thinking we've got 65 million in short-term loans? And does that correspond to the Public Works Loan Board debt that we have? And then in conjunction with that, 5.10, it talks about 402 million as an authorised limit for external debt. So if the current total is 267 million, are we saying our wiggle room is up to 402?
Yes, that's what we're saying. We have an upper limit of what we can borrow to, which, as we say, we are nowhere near that limit at the moment. So at Q1, we had roughly, we had a short-term borrowing portfolio as well. That is not necessarily with the PWLB. We can take out short-term loans with them, but it can be with a number of different providers is the wrong word. It's usually local authority into market lending we look at.
And are we happy that if we were to go up to that limit of 402 million, that would be, we would have a sustainable model of borrowing and paying back those loans?
That is the assumption that when we set that limit, that is the upper limit.
Okay.
We generally don't treat it like a target though, but it is the absolute upper limit.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, really, I mean, that is a really good KPI for us to say, and for you to say, how close are you going to get to that? And at the moment, I'm comfortable with where we are, frankly. I think it will creep up, accelerate, partly again, that high needs block hanging over us. And by the way, I've just thought of the reference, a miles a day helps you work, rest and play. I don't think that's what I was talking about with affluence. Sorry, Chair, couldn't resist.
Thank you. Councillor Matharaj and then Councillor Sumner.
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to ask something on the borrowing and you asked part of my question. So not to repeat, I'll just jump onto this second part of my question, which I thought was, considering the borrowing cost, the 25-year, which was mentioned in the report as higher to what is there, would it be possible to still look at, I know Mr. Holmes is sitting behind me, answered previously when in the previous meetings in the last years, would it be possible for us to consider or have been considering the community infrastructure bonds, issuing bonds locally so we can take advantage of the lower interest rates from the Bank of England? And what's the strategy to offset this still higher long-term borrowing cost? Thank you.
Yes, within our investment in borrowing strategy, we can look at alternative methods. And every time we do have a borrowing requirement, we do look at all the different options. It is not naturally always a default to PWLB, which is why we have long-term and short-term. We have a variety of sources where we take our lending from. But yes, we can.
Okay, Councillor Sumner.
Thank you, Chair. I should have said when I was speaking earlier, and colleagues have reminded me, as well as the Thale Station situation, that I think probably one of the other biggest disappointments is the solar farm. And that slippage, unfortunately, appears to just keep growing, and it keeps growing because we, as the report says, we have still yet to appoint a contractor. And I'm probably looking to my left a little bit more than I was earlier to see what the situation is with that, Mrs. Lawrence. If you could possibly give us some sort of update on that, because that seems to have been the ongoing issue. Now we've done, if you will, the donkey work. We've done all the real hard graft on this, and it's that point where you're then again relying on somebody else, but to still not have a contractor appointed is a concern, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, so we did go out to procurement and we were unsuccessful. So we had a bit of a kind of a rethink about our approach, and consequently joined a matrix arrangement and went back out to procurement. Luckily, we've had some interested parties through that process and we feel more optimistic, but it has resulted in delays. One thing that we've been very active in doing is making sure that we've cleared all the planning conditions so we can start on site. So, you know, we can do a technical commencement to keep the planning permission alive. And I think, you know, literally at the end of last month, we got to that point where we were satisfied that everything had been complied with and we can go ahead and commence the development. One of the things that we're really keen to do is to show that we're very committed to this project, because we do know that government are looking at those connections with a view to those that have been delayed, you know, are actually going ahead. And so we've managed at this point to satisfy them. So we've still got that connection. But we're really hopeful now that we can get that contractor in place.
Thank you. Good to hear.
Councillor Wollaston.
Could I just point you towards item 5.16? I'm slightly concerned to see that the liability benchmark's gone up from 2024 241 million up by 50% to a projection in 372 million. Are there any logical reasons for that? Apart from what I clearly understand, I understand adult social care and all pressures. That does seem a huge gap, and it gets you quite close to your £402 million absolute cap.
Yeah, I will let Shannon pick that up. I did talk to Shannon about it earlier. It is, of course, a projection up to the 372. But Shannon, can you pick that up, please?
It does go near the cap. It is a projection based on proposed capital programmes. So that is revised every year. So that is based on the capital programmes that have been agreed and capital programmes delivered in the past, because this is all about all of our financing, historic capital programmes, current capital programmes, and what our needs are being pushed by our capital refinancing, our general operating activities, and that DSG pressure lurking in the background, which is forcing us to borrow more to fund our capital programme. So it's the current capital programme, future capital programmes, and refinancing historic capital programmes.
But if we were to get to that level, an interest rate of 5%, thereabouts, 4.5%, 5%, that is a massive element of the revenue budget for the council.
It would be, yes.
Okay.
Sure, I think, you know, you're right. And it is why I said at the beginning of this debate, we have got to look at our capital programme and the scale of it.
Relieved to hear you say that, Councillor Brooks.
I said it again.
I've just got a question, then I'll come to Councillor McKinnon. In 5.12, it says, as at 30th of June 2025, the proportion of total borrowing that matures within 12 months is 26.78%, and the weighted average interest rate for borrowing is 3.86. So 26.78% of 267 million, I calculate, is 71 million of debt that matures within the 12 months to the 30th of June 2026. So are we happy that we've got sufficient money to pay off those debts?
What those debts will be refinanced essentially. So that is built into our cash flow projections. It's built into our annual investment and borrowing strategy, and it is thoroughly built into what we expect to do this year. So yes, we expect to refinance debt. A lot of that is the short-term debt that we are undertaking to avoid having to undertake long-term high-cost PWLB borrowing.
Councillor McKinnon.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back on what Councillor Willison raised about the liability benchmark, and you both mentioned that it was a projection. Can I just get some clarity? A projection, a forecast, an estimate, is this where you think we'll be at in 2028, or is it a simulation of where we would be at in 2028 based on historic movements? It could be both, it could be neither. Just what do we think is going to be the case in 2028?
Based on the knowledge I have available to me when this report was produced and our budgets, this is what we would be at if we continue with our current capital planning and our capital refinancing. But as Councillor Brooks has said, we need to revisit those capital programmes. So it is based on current knowledge, and I suppose it is a combination of what you said, based on best knowledge at the time.
So it's taken from the MTFS, and we've got to look at that. We've got to reprofile it and then bring this table back, frankly, as we've adapted it through new budget setting.
And just on a lighter note, a Mars a day helps you work, rest and play was a slogan which was invented or devised by the Formula One commentator Murray Walker when he was a Mars advertising executive in the 1950s. That's one for your pub quizzes later on.
Can do better.
Go on.
Because I employed an accountant who had once worked as a marketing person for the Milk Marketing Board, and he came up with the naughty but nice on cream donuts.
Chairman, can I make a proposal that the rest of the meeting is taken up by advertising trivia?
Okay, 5.14, it says the capital programme is expected to inflate the council's CFR 2346 million. From what figure? Sorry if I've missed what that figure is.
It would be the prior, there's the prior year's CFRs is what that should be coming off of. It should be the move.
Do we know what the figure was for the prior year?
I can find out.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Any other questions, colleagues? Scrolling down. Okay. So we did have a proposal, didn't we? I'm trying to remember what it was now. It's getting late in the evening. I can't have Stephen's probably captured it.
Councillor Ahmed-Sarraj, was that a proposal? Was that what you're referring to, sorry?
Was it something you proposed? I think there was a document we asked for, and I think Councillor Brooks said he could provide us with the document. We'll check back. Yeah. We'll check back through the recording. Yeah, I should have made a note. Okay, great. Thank you very much indeed for that. So moving swiftly on, we've got revenue performance report. Back to Councillor Brooks and Shannon. Thank you.
It's the end of Q1. The key for me in this report is number 2. The executive were asked to note the following. The projected overspend at 2.89 million nets to 681k after the application transformation funding. That's forecast. That's forecast that on a £184 million budget will be 681k overspent, which is, again, Councillor McKinnon will know, a very small tolerance, so we can work out the percentage. It's about delivering that forecast. And we'll be watching that very carefully because the budget holders have forecast that. And what movement do we get on that in Q2, Q3, and ultimately Q4? But certainly 681k overspend is within the margins and certainly containable. So that's the takeaway from me. I'm sure there'll be detail on certain parts of it. But overall, as you know, if I were in charge of finance, I suppose I am in a way, that is quite satisfactory at this stage.
I don't have anything to add, but I'm happy to answer
Okay,
questions.
thank you. Councillor Wollaston.
Just turn to 6.2. I found those graphs extremely confusing. Could we have some clarification exactly what they do mean? I think they're meant to show our performance against the other 5 unitaries, but there's no explanation of that.
Yes, I will get some more detail
Thank
put
you
on
very
those
much.
graphs.
Councillor Reid.
It's a little bit more around 5.2. I can't think. Anyway, again, it's my concern always about risk. Previously we've had parliaments where we've put through risk, cost of living crisis, rapid inflation, etc., etc. I'm hoping that's not going to happen again internally, but there is a lot of geopolitical pressure on the markets on what's happening in inflation and what actually governments might have to do to react to that in forms of taxation and various other bits and pieces. What would that put any of these cost savings at risk? Would we be seeing that amount that's in green at 50%, which is, now I'd like to see it higher, but 50% is kind of encouraging. We like to see more of that money slip out of the green into the yellow, amber and red area.
I'll let Shannon come back. Also, I've got 2 EDs in the room who might want to respond as well. It's quite a volatile world at the moment. That means that finances across the world are volatile as well. Things that could impact this, Councillor Reid, is unemployment, more people needing more support. But at the basic level, you know as well as I do, we could get one child extra come into care, having to come into care to protect them, to keep them safe, which could make a huge impact on the people, the Children's Family Services. So it is risk, it is balanced risk, and the macroeconomic, so the macro world position is a risk we can't really factor in here, I don't think, and councillors don't tend to. We'd look at movements like interest rates and then economy, where we've always been quite a high employment area, but there are risks. We couldn't see the black swan event of COVID in December 2019, and we wouldn't have factored it in any risk analysis. So that's a long-winded way of saying probably not the macro risks in there, but certainly the risks that were the known risks within our district are in there, and per those red, amber, green RAG rating. Anything to add to that, John?
All I would say, this was the Q1 position. Q2 is currently underway and it is monitored on a quarterly basis. Finance are in constant contact with the services to know how they're progressing. So we will update this in due course during the year. And we do hope to achieve as much as humanly possible of these savings.
Thank you.
Councillor Macro.
Thank you. Also in section 5.2, it mentions TVI transformation savings. I wonder what that was, please.
It's something that might have been picked up in transformation, in your transformation debate. What is it? Value impact. Triple value impact is an organisation that comes in and looks at process management, has software it can bring to bear. And we've dropped several projects into the transformation programme that they've recommended that will give us a return. Will all be explained in those PDG, policy development groups, of what they're looking at. I say they're looking at, they pointed us out and given us the sort of toolkit to do so. And that will lead to savings. But it took longer than we anticipated, in probably 3 or 4 months to get the programme up and running. And that was choosing the right ones from a basket of about a dozen to say those 6 are worth backing, because there is a cost up. So there's a bit of slippage on that, which impacted this. I got told off by the chief exec that we were taking a bit long to decide. I'm normally telling the officers off that they're taking too long on things. So that's the honest answer, but it will be quite impactful when it happens. Triple value impactful, probably.
Going back to the topic of transformation, there is a net variance of 2.9 million, and it does look like it's the biggest net variance on there, which I think underscores the fact that we do need to look at this very carefully. I was just wondering how the adult social care team managed to save 608,000 and thereby mitigate the fact that we hadn't dealt with the care homes yet. Do we know how they did that and what lessons they've learned from that?
You might have heard me say earlier that they have, through efficiencies within the care homes we run, are projecting a 600k saving in those care homes against a £2 million sort of target if we were to get them away to the private sector. I did say that earlier, and that sort of marries up with what you just asked me. I think I'm right, but you're frowning, so maybe you can see something else.
No, I'm just looking at my
Okay.
notes. Thank
Forgive
you
me.
very much. Thank you for that. I understand we borrowed 4 million from Public Works Loan Board this year so far, and we owe 74 million back over the next 18 months, and it's 40 million this year and 38 million the next. That's correct, is it?
Short-term borrowing is generally under 12 months, so we'd have to refinance that within a 12-month period. So I'd have to look at how we've actually profiled that. But if it's over 12 months, it's not short-term borrowing, it would be deemed long-term borrowing.
Okay. So within the next 12 months, I think we've got to pay back 40. So yeah, it'd be quite good to get some profiling information on that. Thank you. Yeah, if we can make a note of that, that'd be useful. Thank you. Councillor McKinnon.
Thanks, Chairman. Just in 5.1 of the report, I think it's the first time I've seen this, but roughly half of the budgeted savings are on track to be delivered, with just under a quarter currently showing as ragged red. I'm not sure ragged is a verb we should be using in a report like this, not for members of the public to read. I think we could maybe tidy that one up if that's okay. I'm getting some nods of agreement, which is nice. On 6.2, I was going to raise exactly what Councillor Williston raised about the bar chart. So like him, I assumed that the other bars were the other Berkshire authorities. I'm also not entirely sure what this is trying to tell me. If you look at the scale, I mean, when you first look at the bars, particularly the council tax collection, it looks like there's a massive variance between the collection rates. If you look at the scale, it's all much of a muchness. I mean, the scale goes from 26 up to 29.5 and 30. All that's telling me is that we're about a third of the way through the year in terms of council tax collection. If there is some blindingly amazing insight from that graph, then great. But I'm not sure it adds very much, particularly with the poor labelling. Councillor Coyle asked what this was. Now, I think this is a list of the transformation funding that's being applied to the revenue budget, and do correct me if I'm wrong, and it's based on the outturn. Now, the outturn report that we looked at a few months ago here said that 2.868 million of transformation funding was going to be applied to the budget. None of the totals on this sheet tie back to that outturn report. And before I go any further, I'm going to let Shannon chip in and say what I'm not looking at, which I should be.
That is transformational activity across the council, not just the official transformation programme, and it is the current year as it stands now. So it's not at Q1, it is not at outturn, it is all the transformational knowledge we have of the entire programme, not just the official transformation programme, but activity across the council.
Okay, so thanks for that. And that stops my audit query about the totals adding up. But Shannon, through you, Chair, are these items that are being applied to the revenue budget? They are. So this is another plea then and I've raised this with Councillor Cottingham before and he agreed, we need to be very careful about transformation funding that we apply to the revenue budget, because the auditors will be sniffing around that like nothing else. And when I look at a few of these items, there's not a huge amount of detail, but talent attraction, that's one that jumps out. 2 times business analysts, that jumps out. If I'm an auditor, I'm saying that's revenue, and you've got to have damn good evidence to convince me. So I'm just flagging it. I hope that it doesn't come back to bite us, really, but let's just be careful that this is ticking the boxes with the accounting policy.
I'll tick one box if I may. Talent attraction is a fancy word for recruitment efficiency, which we've improved dramatically.
I completely take on board Councillor McKinley's point. We do undertake a thorough review of this programme, and as part of the outturn last year, we did that process, and a number of projects were reverted back to revenue. So I take on board the comments, and we will be challenging all transformation funding.
Any more questions from colleagues? No. Okay, so we've got an action to get some information about the profiling of the short-term loans that we owe this year. Was there anything else that members want to make sure we've captured as action points? Okay, great. Thank you very much indeed, colleagues, for your participation in that item. And one thing to note, we were having a chat informally amongst some of us about getting a briefing on the finances. I do think that would be quite useful for us, and maybe for the governance members as well, just to make sure we've completely got our heads around the exceptional financial support, Public Works Loan Board, et cetera, to make sure we have all the information we need and we're asking the right sort of questions at scrutiny. I did have an informal discussion with Councillor Cottingham about that as well. So I think if we can follow that up, I think that would be useful if members are happy with that. So that would be a private briefing, not in a standard meeting, just so that we can get our heads around these issues. Yep. Yes.
Sorry, I'm not sure. What do you mean a private briefing? Don't you have a scrutiny committee that you could look at that in?
Yeah, so what we've done before, when we found out that there were, I think it was 40 individuals that were costing around £10 million in adult and children's care, we wanted to understand at that point how it was that we were spending a lot of money on individuals. So we had a private briefing where the officers went through examples, obviously anonymised, of why it was that people had such complex needs. And that enabled us to understand the issues and to therefore ask more useful questions, essentially. So in these meetings, we don't get an opportunity to dive into the detail of EFS and Public Works Loan Board and everything else, but a briefing would give us the opportunity to ask those detailed questions.
And what I would ask of you is that any member of the council could attend.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep. But having been to my first governance meeting a couple of months ago, I think from the conversation there, I think it would probably be useful as well. No doubt Councillor Pattenden will have an input into how we might shape that briefing. Great, thank you very much indeed. Right, moving on to item 10, task and finish group updates. So the first item on this is the Sports Hub report, and then Councillor Reid is going to give us an update about the project management task and finish group that he's been chairing. So I will introduce this item. Councillor Reid is going to make a contribution as well as one of the members of the task and finish group to talk about the project management aspect. And I also, with members' agreement, would like to invite Councillor Marsh to say something as well, because he was a member of the task and finish group, and then we'll obviously open it up to questions and debate. So first and foremost, we had 6 objectives that we looked at, including whether the project was value for money, whether we thought it delivered on the council's strategic objectives, whether it was well managed, whether reliable and consistent advice was given to members about the project, whether the decision to abandon the project was a good decision, and also whether the council intends to deliver any elements of that original Sports Hub project. So that was what we focused on. I want to thank the members of the task and finish group. So as I've mentioned, that was Councillor Reid, Councillor Marsh, also Councillor Dick and Councillor Cottam, who aren't with us this evening. So thanks to them. Thanks also to Gordon Oliver, who clerked it, and indeed to all of the witnesses, internal and external, who came to give evidence. So in summary, objective 1 was determining whether the Sports Hub project was value for money. Council's playing pitch strategy adopted in February 2020 identified its #1 priority as Faraday Road Stadium and the relocation thereof. A budget of 5.6 million was allocated. However, this was insufficient, so the council was only seeking to deliver 6 3G pitches in a 5-year period. The cost of the proposed sports hub was 3.878 million, according to an executive decision in March 2023. Newbury Community Football Group submitted a document to the Task and Finish Group claiming that the total cost of ownership of the sports hub to the council over a 40-year period was a minimum of 11.5 million, with interest payments of around £137,000 per year. So that was their judgment on the basis of the research they'd done. Their contention, the football group, was that the council could have met its target of 6 new 3G sports pitches in a 5-year period for the same amount of money that was being proposed to be spent on the Sports Hub project. In 2021, Newbury Community Football Group published a business case to reopen Faraday Road, approved by Sport England, and the cost of that was 1.1 million, so considerably less than the Sports Hub. And the Football Foundation and Sport England offered to fund 75% of the cost of the works. So they would have contributed a significant amount to that and saved the cost. So it appears to the Task and Finish Group that reopening Faraday Road would actually have provided better value for money than the Sports Hub project. The Sports Hub project would have represented considerable financial benefit to Newbury Rugby Club, and we interviewed them as part of our work. The witness said that the project would have been of great benefit to the organisation, that they were approached by the council asking them if they'd participate in this project. The rugby club incurred no expenditure, and it would have benefited from the initial lump sum payment and the annual rental income. And also long-term maintenance would have been the council's responsibility. Members asked the Sports Hub project cost to date, and the total figure was between £214,000 and £219,000, and the council has nothing to show for that outlay. So recommendations included achieving policy and strategic objectives while maximising value for money, and there must be documentation demonstrating that all options have been considered, including cost comparisons. The business case must be maintained and reviewed. Projects must have clear tolerance thresholds, including budget and timescale. Hours spent on capital projects by business as usual staff must be recorded and allocated against the correct capital project code. And there are other recommendations on there too. With regard to objective 2, looking at whether the project would have delivered on the council's strategic objectives, based on the findings related to objective 1 above, it could be argued that the best way to achieve the #1 priority in the playing pitch strategy would have been to reopen Faraday Road. This would have represented better value for money and been quicker to achieve. The Sports Hub would not have been a replacement in fact, because it did not have the capacity to develop beyond step 4, whereas Faraday Road had the potential to achieve step 2. We also commented on a group about the limited consultation with the public, and we've made a recommendation that public consultation with groups should be more detailed in the future. Objective 3, Councillor Reid will talk on that. With regard to objective 4, about whether or not we received reliable and consistent advice, initially we understand that the council wanted vacant possession of that site so that St Modwyn could work on the development of it. And the former CEO, Nick Carter, and other officers said there is no obligation on the council to replace Faraday Road. It then became clear that there was an obligation to do that. And indeed, it was made clear to Nick Carter and other officers that a link needed to be made between the Sports Hub and Faraday Road in order to satisfy the NPPF. So it was clarified, you do have to replace that football pitch. You cannot just close it and walk away. The Sports Hub was described as a replacement for Faraday Road at Western Area Planning Committee in December 2021 and also at the executive meeting the following day. In February 2022, a resident declared their intention to make a legal challenge. When it came to District Planning Committee in March 2022, members were told that it was not a replacement for Faraday Road and it should be considered as a standalone project. And that was the council's defence in its judicial review as well, that it was standalone. The judicial review was rejected in February 2023, and the High Court said it was indeed a standalone project and had no link to Faraday Road. However, after winning that court case, the executive in March 2023 said that it was effectively a replacement. They made the link in their document to the number one priority in the playing pitch strategy, which is Faraday Road and the replacement thereof. So we went from it being a replacement to not being a replacement and back to it being a replacement again. We did ask officers why the narrative had changed, and we were told it was because Sport England had withdrawn their request for a link to be made between Faraday Road and the Sports Hub. But we in the Task and Finish group were of the opinion that the council were very much the drivers of the narrative about it being a replacement. They understood they had to replace it because of the NPPF, and it was not because Sport England withdrew their request for a link. Sport England wanted there to be conjoined planning applications, and that did not happen. So when it came to judging the planning application, Sport England had no choice but to view it as a standalone, because there was no existing planning application relating to Faraday Road. And indeed, Sport England made it very clear that if it had have been presented as a replacement, the specification was not good enough to be a replacement for Faraday Road, and therefore they would actually have objected to it. So if it had been proposed as a replacement, we would have had Sport England, the Football Association and the Football Foundation opposing it because they did not think it was good enough. Officers did emphasise to us that there is a difference between the council acting as landowner and project promoter and acting as local planning authority, and anyone who has been on planning understands that distinction. We acknowledge that, but as I said, executive did say it was a replacement for Faraday Road after winning a court case saying it was a standalone. So in our judgment as a Task and Finish group, we are in no doubt that we were not given reliable and consistent advice about the project when we were being asked to make decisions at planning meetings and indeed at executive. Final recommendations: the Sports Hub project should have been promptly closed after the executive decided they were not going to proceed with it, and all project accounts should have been completed. A project like the Faraday Road refurbishment project should start with a new baseline, be a distinct project and have its own budget line. So in conclusion, the Sports Hub specification was not good enough to be a replacement, and as a standalone, one could argue that it was a vanity project because, as outlined, the money that was being proposed to be spent on that could have been spent on several football pitches instead, and then the council could have said it had achieved the objectives of its playing pitch strategy. Councillor Reid, would you like to talk on the project management?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's worth. Sorry, I'll start again. I think it's also worth scrutiny reflecting on that there has been previous project management scrutiny reviews. Councillor Brooks is very much aware of the London Road Industrial Estate response to the task group. There were, believe there were 15 recommendations that came out of the LRIE. I'll quickly skim through some.
satisfy adequate project management methodology in place. No further action was required was the response. Business case, no further action. Budget, no further action. Governance, no further action. Terms of reference, no further action. Record retention policy, check it is implemented correctly. Risk register, governance group to ensure. And I can go on that there was a number of either no further actions or that it would all be managed. I have to say, looking at the project management for Sports Hub, that many of those lessons clearly hadn't been taken into account or weren't implemented, and this wasn't being run as a tightly run project. And so you can see that the recommendations 13 onwards in the report under Objective 3, again, we're talking pretty much about the same observations again, and I'm sure us who are project managers, program managers as professionals, we would say, surely before you took on such a large program, the first thing you do is you look at any lessons learned from other suitably large programs and lessons learned and recommendations for enhanced governance. Yet, 13 to number 20 seems to repeat those findings, which I think people can just read or should have read as part of the pre-read. So I'm hoping that we will not be seeing this again in the task and finish group. Obviously, you will pick up certain things because circumstances of projects, but there were quite a wide-ranging number of problems, and I think the most frustrating out of them was trying to define the timeline. It took a long time for the task and finish group to be able to understand the sequence of events. We did find it, and thank very much for the evidence given by all the attendees to those, but it should have really been something that should have been pulled straight out of the project repository from status reports and gate reports, and a final lesson learned and a well-maintained project plan as it goes along, and any exception reports that should have been raised. I'm happy to take any questions on those observations, recommendations on the project, on project management side, if anyone wants to raise any.
Councillor Marsh, would you like to say anything as a member of the task and finish group?
If that's acceptable to your members, as I'm not a member of the committee chair, you'll be relieved to know I'm going to be brief because I think you've covered most of it, and I think the report speaks for itself. But I would just like to praise Councillor Culver for the way she's chaired this group so painstakingly for just about exactly a year. It's taken a great deal of dedication and patience, which has been necessary in the 7 months since we agreed the original draft of our report back at the beginning of February. I'd also like to thank Gordon Oliver, the officer, and my fellow members on this cross-party group. Members of the committee may recall that Councillor Dick, who sadly can't be here tonight, I think I'm missing him, was an enthusiastic supporter of the Sports Hub project and spoke eloquently and passionately about it, in favour of it, at the District Planning Committee, to which Councillor Covers just referred. At the same meeting, I, as ward member for Newbury Wash Common, put forward the opposing view. But it's not about whether, as members, we supported the project or not. It's about the entire process, which, if you've read the report, the members of the task group, whether Liberal, Democrat, Conservative or Green, found that process, as we've just heard, deeply flawed. There are 27 recommendations in the report, which at one point we were told was too many. I'm not quite sure why. Anyway, now the committee has them, and I hope you will agree that they are robust proposals that are not just about what's gone wrong in the past, but how the council can do things better in the future. We owe it to the people who elected us and who, after all, foot the bill for these projects and are entitled to clear and transparent answers and explanations to the questions we've considered in this report. Did it offer value for money? Did it help to deliver the council's strategic objectives? Was it well managed? Was the advice given to members reliable and consistent? I hope that members will agree that the answers to these questions as detailed in our report should now be sent to the executive. Thank you very much, members.
Thank you very much. Members, do you have any questions or comments, please? Councillor Wollaston.
Thank you, Chairman. You won't be surprised to find that I was fairly horrified by this report, which is the first time I've seen it. What it did not put into context was the decision by the administration at the time that Faraday Road was a non-starter for a football pitch. The reasons for that were economic regeneration, financial, firstly, it could be the capital sum, and secondly, capital tax and business rates income in the future. Social, the provision of 30% affordable housing, but that was built. All of that was completely ignored. I fully agree with Councillor Reid's assessment on project management. I think it was a flaw in the council at the time. I think it is still to agree a flaw, as I think Councillor Brooks agrees. There was a clear business case, and that case was put forward by what is now the council's appointed leisure management people, and they were quite clear that it would break even within 1 year. So I'm afraid I totally disagree with what's in the report about that. There's no mention about the advantages there were of that pitch, and it could generate playability of 80 hours a week compared to what is 2 or 3 on the Faraday Road pitch. And there was no comparison to the superb changing and social facilities that we were proposing. As for timing, the people would be up and playing all this a year ago if we got on with it. So I'm very disappointed at the way this report was put forward. I do think it's a shame that you didn't have anybody from the previous administration within the working party, because they may well be able to give you a better direction as to a lot of the cause and effect. And I'll leave it at that, but I think it's a very disappointing and one-sided report.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I will just point out that you, as a member of the administration and the then portfolio holder, did come to give evidence, and you did see the report in February on that point. In terms of having former portfolio holders on a task and finish group, we're not allowed to do that, because if we're doing scrutiny, we can't have people who were in power at the time when the decisions were being made. We have got a point in there about the fact that it would have been a 3G pitch rather than a grass pitch. That is in there. And with regard to the changing rooms, the facilities that we used to have at Faraday Road were far superior to what was being proposed. And it would have been a lot better, in our opinion, to have reopened that. We lost the stands, we lost the fencing and everything else, and the site was allowed to deteriorate. And if we'd kept those facilities, in our opinion, that would have been a better option.
It is, of course, an opinion.
Well,
I would say to you, I mean, I think I was one of the first people called.
Yeah.
And there was no option to come back again and explain further on the points that you made, which I think is a mistake.
Okay, but task and finish groups, we don't usually do that, just for benefit of members of the public who might not know how the process works. We have a series of people who come to give evidence. We don't invite them back repeatedly. We give each of them an opportunity to come and give evidence. We look at any documents they send to us subsequently to back up what they've said, and we look at those and consider them. But we wouldn't normally, as part of that process, invite people to come back a second time. But thank you for your questions.
I think support the system personally, I guess.
Yeah, and indeed, we have talked before about the need to look at the task and finish group process and the parameters. And I think, if I'm not incorrect, Ms Thomas has been looking at that. And at some point, we will need to get the chairman of the 3 scrutiny committees together with Nikki and anyone else who's interested, and have a look at the parameters of that and how we do stuff, I think. Because one of the things I was asked was to get the formal permission of the rugby club for it to be published. Now, again, we don't usually ask for people to, formally sign off on something. So I chaired the Healthcare and New Developments Task and Finish Group, for example, and we didn't ask any of the people who gave evidence to sign off on it. Basically, this forum is the opportunity to challenge the conclusions that we drew. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Wollaston. Any other questions, comments? Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I've got a few problems with the report in terms of its conclusions and the weighting that it's given to evidence. I mean, I think you said yourself in the introduction to this and I'm quoting you, you do have an obligation to replace the football pitch. You can't just close it and walk away. The council can close a facility that it owns to do something else with it as much as it wants. I think in order to obtain planning permission to do something else on it, Sport England would have wanted to see a replacement facility in order to not raise an objection. And I think I believe that's what you're meaning. And that really gets to the nub of it. There is a nuance between the council's status as local planning authority and the executive, the then administration, deciding to commercially develop Faraday Road site. Now, the report does acknowledge it. You mentioned it in your preamble, but then it appears to ignore it in arriving at the conclusion and recommendations. So it's not quite as simple as what you say, in my view. Now, the way that the costs have been presented, so there's quite a lot of weighting given to the documents and the evidence submitted by Newbury Community Football Group. So on page 2, and I'm quoting from the report here, the cost of the proposed sports hub was 3.878 million, according to executive decision 23rd of March 2023. Now, Newbury Community Football Group submitted a document to the Task and Finish Group claiming that the total cost of ownership of the sports hub to the council, excluding loan interest, over a 40-year period was a minimum of 11.58 million. So the report has presented the sports hub proposal costs over a 40-year period. The then counter proposal in 2021, Newbury Community Football Group published a business case to reopen Faraday Road approved by Sport England. The scheme would cost 1.1 million for a 3G pitch. Now that's initial capital cost. There's no equivalent 40-year cost described for the counter proposal by way of comparison. So at first glance of this, you would see, 11.58 million over 40 years. And then you're comparing that with a cost of 1.1 million. And I don't think you're presenting like with like there. And the conclusion, and I'm quoting again, this is the Task and Finish Group's conclusion. From the above figures, it appears that reopening Faraday Road would have provided better value for money than the sports club. And I think you quoted that in your preamble. There's no indication in the report that any scrutiny or due diligence was applied to the proposals and the figures from Newbury Community Football Group. If that did occur by the Task and Finish Group, it's not evident in the report. So that, I think, is my first major problem with the way that the report is presented. If I can then just skip on to page 18. I'm skipping forward a few pages now. And it's just above the table. So it's the last bullet point in terms of the narrative of the report author. What is in no doubt, so again, this is a conclusion of the Task and Finish Group, is that reliable and consistent advice was not given to members about the project to assist them in their decision-making roles. This is unacceptable and must not happen again. It has eroded trust in the council. On whose part? There's no description about who has lost trust in the council. That is presented as a statement of fact when it would appear to be an opinion, and an opinion that is not backed up with evidence or detail. Skipping forward again to page 21. This is about the consultation. Firstly, looking at just the bottom paragraph, and I'll come to the questions in the consultation because the Task and Finish Group is quite critical about the consultation. But the bottom paragraph, it begins, the task group considers that the questions, which appear to have been specifically designed to elicit favourable answers, with very little for anyone to object to. Now, again, that's quite an accusation to make about the person who put the consultation together. There's no further detail or evidence backing up that accusation. And it is a bit of an accusation. It's accusing the officer who was responsible for the consultation of a bit of chicanery, to put it mildly. So there's no backup for that. Despite its limitations, the fact that it received a patchy reception. What does patchy mean? I mean, that's not a professional term to put in a report. What was the reception? How many people responded? That's a poor choice of words, I think. So I think that's pretty poor. And further, it says that in reality, no one, including council members, had the chance to seriously question or have a say about this until the planning committee meetings much later. Now, this consultation was carried out in March to April 2021. 2 executive reports were brought to the executive committee in 2021. The first one was in April. That's EX 4010. The second one was in December, EX 4041. By definition, council members had a chance to seriously question and have a say about this well before the planning committee meetings. So in that conclusion, the Task and Finish Group report is wrong in fact, not just opinion. Now, I could go on here, but to sum up, the evidence submitted by some witnesses appears to have been given much greater weight than it would warrant. It appears that the conclusion about better value for money has been arrived at without really any scrutiny of the figures provided. And I'll conclude by saying I agree with Councillor Williston that the criticism about the consultation, it didn't include the alternative of retaining the existing Faraday ground at Faraday Road. Well, no, it wouldn't. For the reasons that he said, the executive had made it quite clear at that point that they wanted to develop Faraday Road for commercial development, commercial use. It would have been bizarre to have included that in a consultation. You know, that decision had been made and it only didn't happen because of the change in administration. And finally, just coming back to that, I think very shabby point. The questions appear to have been specifically designed to elicit favourable answers with very little for anyone to object to. The first question, how far do you agree with our proposal to provide a new sports ground at Newbury Rugby Club? It's pretty easy for residents to say no and object to that. So I could go on. I think my overall impression of the report is very similar to Councillor Williston, and I look forward to hearing what other members have to say.
Thank you very much, Councillor McKinnon. I shall try to answer all of those and hopefully not miss anything out. So you mentioned about the replacement issue. The council was told that it couldn't just close a football ground. It had to, under the NPPF, replace it with something equivalent or better. So you made the point about, you know, you should be able to shut down a council asset, and that's your decision. But it then became apparent to the council, and we have evidence of this through an FOI request, and I think a video that was shared with members today by NCFG, that they did then realise that there needed to be a replacement, either similar or better. I think the point with regard to the figures from NCFG, they made the point that we would have been subsidising the project for many years to come. So the rugby club would have benefited, for example, and they thought that that cost was essentially being hidden. So when we were talking about 3.8 million, it wasn't actually giving a true view of what was going to happen across the long term because of the amount of money we were going to have to give to the rugby club. And they wanted to make the point that if they'd done their own proposal, they could have got funding from Football Association and Football Foundation, and that would have actually reduced the cost even further. Sorry, beg your pardon, Nikki. Yeah, so Nikki's quite right. You pointed out to me twice now. Thank you. If we're going to continue beyond 10 o'clock, we need to have someone propose to extend for an extra 30 minutes. I'm happy to propose that. Is anyone happy to second, Councillor Reid? Are members content with that?
I would say that it's unlikely we're going to finish the business of the meeting by 10:30, which I believe is a consideration on this. Members might want to bear it in mind when they're voting. I don't think we're going to conclude the meeting.
Okay. The only items we've got after this are the work plan, exec forward plan and scrutiny work programme, which I think we'll probably be able to get through quite quickly. Do members agree to extend the meeting? All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. Right, so we'll carry on. What else? About the consultation, Councillor Marsh might want to comment on that because he pulled some of that information together for us. Regarding losing trust in the council, the people who came to give evidence to us, it was our strong conclusion that they had lost trust in the council. We know that there have been a large number of public questions that have been asked at executive and full council meetings over the last few years. NCFG, I think the relationship with them could have been nurtured better. And if we had indeed agreed, they had a planning application that was agreed, but we as landowner decided not to allow them to continue with that scheme. And from their perspective, they think that their proposal would have been a lot cheaper. It would have been a lot better. They could have replaced like for like with Faraday Road, and it would have incurred a lot less cost for the council in the long term. So that is our judgment about the loss of trust, just from what we heard from the people who came to give us evidence. Councillor Marsh, did you want to say anything on Councillor McKinnon's point about the consultation?
When the Task and Finish group looked at the questions that were asked, they were mainly sort of questions such as, would you like to see better facilities for, for football in the area, for young people to play sport? They were pretty much leading, I don't have it in front of me, but they were pretty much leading questions that appeared to us, looking at it, to be aimed at, as the report says. And the other aspect about the consultation, there was one exercise right at the start of the whole process. And although Councillor McKinnon rightly says it went to the executive, in terms of public trying to find out what the public thought about this, there was one single consultation exercise right at the start before the details had become apparent, and we had concerns about whether that was thorough, even given whatever the content of the question, whether that was thorough and ongoing to assess whether there was public support, which perhaps there wasn't, but that's not the matter for the report. But that's how we talked about and discussed and agreed on what we felt about the consultation, Chair.
Councillor Reid.
I think it was quite telling to me as a member that when both of the main bodies who were involved in that, when I asked them, did you feel like you were a partner, which was actually part of the previous administration's promise, the manifesto commitments, and saying people feel like they're partners, both of them said no. We absolutely didn't feel like we were partners. It was being done to us.
Councillor McKinnon, sorry, could you put your mic on so we can hear you?
Oh yeah, so I'm just, which bodies is Councillor Reid referring to, just for clarification? Okay. Who said that?
So that was Newbury Football Club and also the Rugby Club.
Yeah, just wanted to come back on a couple of things. So I note that we've had no information about whether any of the figures were scrutinised. I take your point about the people who've told the Task and Finish group about the loss of trust. I think that might have been better explained in the report because we've had to ask the question tonight. On the point about the NPPF requires the council to provide a replacement for Faraday Road, well, what happens if they don't? What power does the NPPF have over the council to force the council to do that? As far as I know, they have the ability to prevent the council from getting planning permission. And I think that is exactly the nuance that a lot of people are missing with this one. And I have to say, on your point about the Newbury Community Football Group feeling that the relationship could have been nurtured better, I'll remind the members of the group that I and fellow executive members were on the receiving end of some fairly vile abuse from the Newbury Community Football Group, from the Newbury Community Football Group's social media accounts. I have all the evidence available, and well, it'd be nice if the person who's responsible for some of that wouldn't be interrupting me from the floor. Absolutely.
Okay, sorry, let's let Councillor McKinnon continue.
I'll be happy to provide all of the evidence to back that up. I certainly will. Are you quite finished, Mr. McDougall, interrupting me from the floor? Well,
sorry,
again,
let the member continue, thank you.
So I think when we talk about the relationship being nurtured better, I think it's important for that to bear in mind. And actually seeing a conclusion that there should have been more consultation and engagement, I think should really bear that in mind. So yeah, I think that's it. My criticism of the report, I think, stands, and happy to shut up and let people get on with it.
Thank you, Councillor McKinnon. I think with regard to the NPPF, it would have given interested parties an opportunity to challenge the council legally if it had shut something and then it had been told that it should replace with equal or better and then hadn't done so. It would give people grounds for challenge. Any other questions, comments from members? Councillor Pattendon.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a feeling, we can go round in circles here on this issue for a long time, and we're never all going to agree. Just to sort of move it on a bit, because I think this was a useful exercise to learn lessons from a big project and how the council approached a big project. And I think, there are a lot of these recommendations I think are valuable and should be taken into account, and will help future projects. And we'll find out in the project management task and finish group how the council is handling these sort of projects now, and how it has done since the sports hub project. I wanted to make a point firstly also about your timeline, or the timeline that was produced. It doesn't mention the date at which the sports hub was cancelled. I think that would be a useful addition. My memory's not brilliant. I think it was around, well, according to ChatGPT anyway, it was around October 23. But that's only ChatGPT talking. It may well be a different date. I think that would be a useful thing to include in the timeline, because it was something that, I remember the new administration being very keen to action as fast as they could. So obviously that couldn't necessarily happen on day one, but it happened within a suitable time period. As far as I'd like to know whether we have the option to propose an amendment to this report. I don't know whether, okay, Nikki, thank you for saying yes to that. Because if we're looking for to recommend this to the executive, then I would be comfortable with it being recommended as is, with the removal of recommendations 23 and 25. And I would be willing to support it on that basis.
Thank you for your comments. I think that's a reasonable suggestion, that we add the date of when the project was cancelled, and we can do that. Very happy to do that. Yes, and as Nikki has indicated, it is possible to propose an amendment. Before we make any proposals, Councillor Amatharaj.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just going to say, I second what Councillor Pattern's amendments are. So, yeah, if you're looking for a seconder, I would like to second.
Are there any other questions or comments before we go to a vote?
Yeah, from my understanding, I think we need to vote on the amendment.
Yes, on the amendment. Yeah, I'm just asking if there are any more questions or comments before I move to a vote, just in case there's anything that people haven't covered off. Okay, Councillor Macro. Yep, that's fine. Okay, so you're making a formal proposal then, Councillor Pattendon, to remove recommendations 23 and 25. Okay, yeah, Councillor Macro.
Thank you. Yeah, on 23, which is suggesting we change the constitution regarding members of the executive voting at planning committee. Mm-hmm. We already have a code of conduct for councillors. We also have kind of planning law, which strongly advises against people who have an interest in an application, in taking part in the deliberations and in the voting of that. So I don't think number 23 is required. And when it comes to number 25, I don't really see what a reference to the Ombudsman would achieve. We have a very hard-hitting report. I think there's a lot of lessons there to be learned by the council. I don't think a reference to the Ombudsman would actually achieve anything, and frankly would waste our time.
Thank you, Councillor Macro. With regard to the planning committees, we thought it would be a good idea that people who are on the executive as the sponsor of the project, as it were, would not be able to speak at planning, not least because that gives cover for the members of the executive. You know, you can say we're proposing this project, we're sponsor of it, but we won't participate in the planning decision. And that actually benefits, I think, the democratic process, but also gives cover to the executive member. So that's why we thought it was a good recommendation. And just quickly on the point of the ombudsman, we would reserve our right as individual members to still go to the ombudsman anyway, just to clarify. Are people content to have a vote on the?
Just
Yeah.
read number 23 because it doesn't say what you've just said. It says when the council is the planning applicant and or the project concerned is being promoted by the executive, members of the executive should not vote. Members of the executive, there are 10 members of the executive. You've just referred to a member who was perhaps promoting the project. There's a discrepancy in what that says and what you've just said. Yeah.
We're proposing basically that members of executive should not vote on planning applications where the council is the sponsor. So if you've got an executive who are promoting a project and saying...
So you weren't talking about an individual executive, say, head of housing and planning or sports and leisure. You were saying all 10 members of the executive cannot take part in the planning, just for the avoidance of doubt. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So if the executive is sponsoring a project, it's best that they don't participate in an independent decision about the planning application. That's basically what we're saying. Shall we move to a vote? So Councillor Pattenden, do we have a seconder for Councillor Pattenden's proposal? Councillor Amatharaj, thank you. All those in favour of Councillor Pattenden's amendment? 4. All those against? 2. Abstentions? 2. So that passes. Thank you very much. So we will remove those two parts from the report. I'd like to propose now that we move to a vote on the rest of the report and that we accept it to go to executive. Do I have a seconder? Sorry, yes.
As leader of council.
Yeah.
I've got one comment and then ask you a question, if I may. In going back nearly 3 years now, 2 years and 8 months at least, to May 23, you are talking about a lot of activity by a previous Conservative administration. And my risk, my administration's risk, my Liberal Democrat group's risk is that some reporter out there will put a headline in that is quite critical of this council, and people out there will read it and think it is the Liberal Democrat administration that is being criticised. That's my severe risk. And I'm making it clear now, and thank you for letting me, that if any journalist is still up at 11 minutes past 10, I do not really want to see a headline that does not make it clear that it was a Conservative administration ran this project. Then I will ask you, if I may, did you ask former Councillor Doherty, who was on the terms of reference, to attend? And why did you not ask Mr. Nick Carter to attend, who may or may not have come? So 2 questions for you there in terms of the working group, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brooks. We had people on our initial list of people to invite, but we decided it would be more appropriate to interview Councillor Wollaston as the former portfolio holder rather than Councillor Doherty. And regarding Nick Carter, I mean, there's an endless list of people that we could have interviewed, to be honest. We could have asked lots of officers to come back. There were planning officers, for example, who we could have invited. We could have invited the Football Association and the Football Federation and so on and so forth. But we felt that Councillor Wollaston was best placed to give us the evidence as the former portfolio holder for sport and leisure. So that was the decision we made. Right, I propose that we accept the rest of the report. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Reid. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Thank you. All those against? 2. Thank you very much. And that's everyone, I think. Great. Thank you very much indeed for your contributions. Oh, I beg your pardon, councillor Sumner, we were an abstention, sorry. Great, right, we've got a quarter of an hour left. Councillor Reid, would you like to give us an update on the project management task and finish group, please?
Bear with me, my screen saver has come on. I'll just open up my report. Thank you very much, Chair. So this is about the project management task and finish group update for resources and place scrutiny committee, which took place on the 1st September. We're just to say we're a little bit behind, but that's because there's been an important reorganisation of the scrutiny into 3 main committees, which obviously gives the general public as well as members greater scrutiny of what's going on. So it was an important delay, but now we're off again. So the following officers attended to give evidence, and I thank them very much for their time on that. They were very forthcoming against questions and providing their own evidence that they thought would be pertinent to our ongoing investigations. And that was Sarah Clark, Executive Director Resources, Gabrielle Mancini, Service Director, who we heard of from a lot today, Kate Pearson, Service Lead Commissioning and Procurement, and we heard some great challenges that Kate faced or faces on a regular basis as procurement lead for the council, and Melanie Best, transformation and programme manager. So we explored a variety of aspects, including the project management methodology, training, project governance arrangements, document management, handover. So it really was a briefing session. This is how we do project management. This is how we scale and size. But we also managed to dip into the projects at question, not in great depths, but it's given us leads for the next sessions around Care Director 6 and iTrent. So it is clear that the project management methodology has improved significantly over time, informed by lessons learned from previous projects where we are now. So the task group was asked to see examples of various project documents. So I've also written to the senior leadership team to provide exemplars, because I don't think it's fair necessarily just to see projects that are under significant scrutiny, but it would be good to hear that, you know, this is a good benchmark that we should be measuring things against that has gone well within the project. We have been told that further changes are coming, and in fact, we heard a lot of that on the transformation today. Centralising project management resource, so the project managers come at the auspices of the project management office rather than sitting in one place, and also hopefully having a great career within the project, within the council over the many years. Hopefully they'll stay with us. For Care Director 6, we'll also be surveying the frontline staff who were involved with testing and using the new software to seek their views. So getting that end user view and how they were engaged during the project, as well as talking about the project sponsor, project managers, technical staff. We'll also extend to an invitation to the supplier to give evidence, but we appreciate they may not be, that they are not compelled to do so. We have a provisional date, and hopefully we're bringing that a little bit forward so people can catch buses at the end of the day, for the 20th of October for our next meeting. Realistically, I think we are now looking at drafting and reviewing the reports internally February to present to the March scrutiny. And that's my report.
Great. Thank you very much indeed for that, Councillor Reid. Any questions on that? No. Okay, thank you very much and good luck with the rest of that work. And thank you to your colleagues as well. Item 11, appointment of task and finish groups. This is a standing item. We don't have any additional task and finish groups at this point in time to appoint to. Executive forward plan. Do colleagues have any items that they would like us to look at that are not already in our work plan? Nope. Okay. Item 13, our work programme going forwards. So we have the Ridgeway Council proposal coming to us on the 1st of October, which I believe Councillor Brooks and Sarah Clark are going to be here for that. Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, thank you. Just on that proposed date, which is an extraordinary meeting, and I think reflected the kind of
business on this agenda, because I think originally we'd said that would come to this meeting. There has, in the last couple of weeks, been several changes around the dates. And so I think that date might be challenging just in terms of where we are with the papers. So whether you want to have a conversation, because if we come before the report goes to council, it is likely that we can give an overview. Some of the other authorities are now having meetings between council and executive. So I think whether you want to have a conversation about when you as chair would like that kind of the scrutiny meeting to take place.
Yeah.
And that will be kind of determined to some extent by whether you want the full proposals to look at and debate in this chamber, or whether you're kind of content with that overview in advance. So I think that they are the two options as to when we have those meetings.
Okay, because it's going to full council on the 17th of October, is it?
No, this is what I'm saying in terms of the date. So I think it is likely now to be the 4th of November.
Okay.
And then with executive the following week. So
I see.
as I say, these dates have changed several times in the last few weeks, and it is just coordinating all of the councils across West Berkshire and Oxfordshire, because all of the reports in effect need to align for the 3 different proposals.
Okay, right. Thank you for that. So we might have to push that back a bit then. And we also wanted a briefing note from housing officers to help inform our discussion about social housing. So we've scheduled social housing for November. I know Mr. Child has been chasing up housing colleagues to get that briefing. So bearing in mind, if we don't have that meeting on the 1st of October, we might have to look at that briefing note in a different way, so we can come back to that. Is there anything else on here that members think we need to change the date, or we need to add anything? Yes, Councillor Amatharaj.
Thank you, Chairman. Just on the social housing, trying to understand what the aspects of social housing would be considered. So we've discussed in the previous meetings about the providers being maybe a option or opportunity to call them for certain clarifications because of this service charges and all the stuff. And they're also, I've raised the topic as well here that there's some of the providers are not able to absorb the affordable houses which are in offer. There are evidences I have in my own ward where applications are being put forward where officers have been tentatively agreed that they cannot absorb, so that goes into that first homes discount scheme. So all those ones, so just trying to understand that coverage of that social housing has these points I mentioned, so we can have an opportunity to prepare questions in advance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we need to flesh out the purpose of what that social housing discussion will be in that grid. Yeah, as you say, Councillor Amatharaj, last time we talked about looking at social housing. So the poor maintenance, the fact houses are being sold off, that they're not being adopted on new developments, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that was basically going to be the coverage. I think we talked about antisocial behaviour as well, but we ended up thinking, well, we can't cover everything. But I think something that does remain outstanding is whether or not we invite some of the social housing providers to actually come along and give evidence to us. Do councillors have particular views on that? It might be nice to hear their side of the story, like we did with Thames Water and the Environment Agency. Any thoughts on that? Councillor Wollaston.
If we can do that, I think we should get more than one provider.
Yeah. So there's A2, Dominion and Sovereign, aren't they? I think those are the 2 biggest, but we could consult with the housing team
There's
about
another
that.
one that is just starting to make a big input in this area.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
Chair, I'm just wondering whether, I believe it's called Homes England, which is the government-backed one. I think that would be useful to get an overview of what's going on in the general social housing sector as well, I think.
I mean, they tend to develop sites, don't they? Like in Compton, they've overseen the demolition of the site and then they sell it on to a developer. And then the developer would obviously pass the housing on to a social housing provider. So I'm not sure whether Homes England would be relevant in that context, but we can certainly investigate. Yeah. Yeah. Councillor Amatharaj.
Thank you, Chairman. And you asked if any other questions are there. So we were looking at, last year, Thames Water came in and then we looked at the flood alleviation. So now we have the Section 19 report and that needs to be adopted on all this. So can we have an opportunity somewhere next year to look at that flood alleviation schemes and all those ones? Fortunately, we didn't have a flood situation this year, but we can't ensure. That's the one other.
Yes, so we've got that to be programmed and we need to decide whether we want another special meeting like we have done for the last 3 years or whether to have it just as a single item on an agenda. I don't know whether members have got a view on that now. Perhaps we should just go away and think about it and have a discussion via correspondence. I'm conscious Mrs Lawrence has got a hand up and then I'll come to Councillor Wollaston.
Thank you, Chair. I just thought I might be able to give some assistance with the housing report and the briefing. So at the moment, there's an awful lot going on in this space. We've got changes in the funding for the RSLs. That's the registered social landlords. We've got changes around the government's general approach to affordable housing. So what we could do in the paper is set out that context. And there will still be some uncertainty until probably the end of the year when we find out what the financial settlements and some of the regulations will be. But we can set out the current position and what we know. And that is bringing some challenges that we're aware of. So you've already mentioned some of them. So we can go through what those challenges are and look at some of the solutions we could start to think about. So, and then, I think we do understand the RSL's position, but we could invite a couple to come and talk to you as well. Does that sound like a way forward? Is that addressing what you would like it to address?
Yeah, I think that would be really useful. I think it's Nick Caprara who's been asked to do a briefing note for us. So it might be worth having a chat with Nick. Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll discuss via correspondence about the Thames Water Environment Agency. Councillor Wollaston.
I just wanted to add into that the pollution issue that Mrs Saunderson's raised.
Yeah, definitely. And we also need to make sure that we look at the Section 19 report that the council produced and which we looked at when we had the last special meeting. Definitely. Northbrook Street I've got here on my list. Have we got that in yet? Pedestrianisation. So that's down for March. Are we still satisfied that that is the best time to look at it? So I understand the trial's going on until until November. And then there'll be a report and a decision after that about what to do in the long term. And then our meeting after that is in February. So we probably need to decide when the best time to do that is. Councillor Brooks.
We're having 6 months to the end of November to get feedback from the public as a consultation exercise. It will take a couple of months to work through that.
Yeah.
So, and the trial will still be continuing. It doesn't finish at the end of November. So it'll be February, March before some lessons learned or feedback will be available, worth considering.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Great. Any other comments on our work programme? No. Okay, thank you very much for that. Right. So our business is concluded. Very long meeting tonight. Thank you very much indeed, everyone, for your contributions. And I declare the meeting is closed. Thank you.